I'll call this meeting to order. The Orange County School Board of Election pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves in the same courtesy towards both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct the meeting. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruptions at the meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. And we'll take one moment of silence. All right, Dr. Felder, it's up to recognitions.
Indeed we are. So good evening, Chair Atherton, Vice Chair Purcell, to the entire board, our students, staff, families. This evening we have 4 special recognitions to celebrate. Next slide, please. So as I shared during convocation, back to school is indeed the most wonderful time of the year. It is a time of possibility, hope, and opportunity. It is a time to build on the progress of the previous year, and we've made progress since the previous school year, as well as to dream about all that is possible for a successful future. So yesterday was the very first day of school for our traditional schools, our 12 traditional schools, and here are some stats from yesterday. We welcomed 6,848 students back to school yesterday. And as previously shared, on July 14th, we welcomed back 424 students to our year-round school, Hillsborough Elementary. So in total, we've welcomed back 7,272 students for this new academic school year. Additionally, 3,200 students were transported via bus, and 2,361 meals were served on the very first day of school. So indeed, overall, it was a great first day of school, as noted in the pictures on the following slides, as well as on the district's website and social media. There were indeed a ton of smiley faces, warm welcomes, hugs, waves, fist pumps, handshakes, high fives, you name it, it happened. Buildings sparkled. Music filled the air on some campuses. There were balloon arches, photo booths. That was a first. I didn't see that, but that's at Pathways. And just plenty of hands on deck. So including board members were present, and that was so helpful. But central services were present, and we will continue to be for the first 2 weeks of school. So, you know, it was all hands on deck to welcome our students back. Next slide. So, wasn't without some glitches. So while there were a few buses that ran late and new stops are being explored, traffic, of course, some of our students are still also waiting to get enrolled. They're still enrolling. Overall, though, the consistent theme that I personally witnessed firsthand and that was shared to me from staff personally, and families that I encountered yesterday and today as I continue to visit schools. And in our after school, every day we're debriefing after school with central services staff, that the first day was really a great day. And so I am honored to thank the board, to thank our families and students, And hope I don't miss anyone, but I'm gonna let it roll. Our custodians, our maintenance workers, our principals, our nurses, coaches, specialists, assistant principals, counselors, administrative assistants, social workers, bus drivers, transportation staff, who, among other things, set up a transportation call center for the second year in a row. And I will tell you, it went from 125 calls, and I know that sounds like a lot, it was, for the first day, to 66 today. So that's progress, right? To our bookkeepers, our data managers, our facilitators, our SROs, extended cabinet members, just everyone, it was everyone. This is a team effort. It's no one person that could have contributed to the start of the school year in the way that we did. So just a huge round of applause to everyone. So thank you all. All right. Okay, so next, thank you, and I hope she's here. I didn't say, oh, there you are, I didn't see you behind the pulpit, podium. Okay, and so in July of this year, you want to stand, you might as well, Miss Andrea DeGette, and we're going to applaud her up front. Videography teacher at Cedar Ridge, and she curtsies, at Cedar Ridge High School, was named the sole, and I need to repeat that, sole recipient of the 2022 Media Literacy Teacher Award by the National Association of Media Literacy Educators, or also known as NAMELY. Mrs. DeGette was chosen for this honor after having been nominated and then selected by the NAMELY Awards Committee, which is made up of media professionals, so not just anyone, people who know her work, right? And specialists from across the nation. Ms. DeGette was honored in a virtual ceremony in July for this special award. There, she also gave a virtual presentation for the NAMELY conference colleagues, which explored the topic of media literacy and education through the specialty of filmmaking, which I've been a beneficiary of her expertise there. I am also told that over the summer, Ms. DeGette was the guest presenter at the 2022 International Media Literacy Research Symposium in Wisconsin. We are so proud of you, Ms. DeGette, and we're proud that you are part of the Orange County School family, and we are so proud of your accomplishments. She continues to impart standards of excellence upon our videography students at Cedar Ridge High School, and tonight we congratulate her on this awesome accomplishment. So congratulations.
Oh boy. I would be speechless if I hadn't written my note here, so thank goodness for, notes. Thank you so much, and I do want to mention that my daughter Colette Canby is here, and she just started medical school at UNC Chapel Hill, first year student. She went to Orange County schools, and I've been living here and working here and volunteering here since 1997, when I was pregnant with Colette, actually. Moved to King Street. So, anyway, here are my remarks. They are brief. Thank you to Allotments Community College and Orange County Schools for allowing me the privilege to bring media literacy through videography to students at Orange County Schools. It has been my honor and pleasure since 2010 to create a space where students can deliver 21st century communication skills, videography, in a creative and professional environment. Thank you to the community partners who have helped with augmenting the program through special projects, participation in our Film Fridays, Lunch and Learn programs, special resources, and support of our programs, such as the upcoming Memory Lab. Don't forget the Memory Lab, you'll hear more about that, through the support and grants and donations and volunteers. So thank you so much for allowing me to provide education and instruction and hopefully inspiration to students here in Orange County schools. And I really look forward to the next, what's coming in the future. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time in this discipline. So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. DeGette. Okay, so next slide, please. So congratulations are in order for our very own communications team. The OCS Communications Department won not one, but 2 national awards in 2022 for original publications in digital media from the National School PR Association, or NSPRA. The district won an award of merit in the special purpose publication category for our Whom to Call Schools Directories. And we received an honorable mention in the electronic newsletter category for external audiences for our Board Matters publication. Well, okay. And so, way to go to our Orange County Schools Communications Department under the leadership of Mr. Kevin Smith, our Chief Public Information Officer, and Ms. Amanda Bunch, Communications Specialist. Is she here?
She is not.
Okay.
She is observing the meeting from her usual battle station.
All right, hello there, Amanda. We are thrilled to have them on the Orange County Schools team, and we thank them for their outstanding communications work in the district that's being noticed nationally. Congratulations. All right. And so there's one more recognition and celebration, and that would be, she's got to come in. You're no hiding this, Rath. You just get yourself in here, please. All right, our Chief Finance Officer, Rhonda Rath, was recently notified by the Association of School Business Officials International that she and her team earned the ASBO International Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Award for the fiscal year of 2021. The district's annual comprehensive financial report for 2020 revealed no, and I mean N-O, underscore, and no means no findings, which is a true testament of the commitment of the Orange County Schools finance team to transparency and high-quality financial reporting. So in this picture, I'm going to call them all out. I know they're all not here. Are any of your team members here? Okay. Hi, team. From left to right, here is the finance team pictured just outside our offices here at King Street. And so we have Dawn Kirkpatrick. She's the payroll coordinator, of course, Rhonda Rath, our Chief Finance Officer, Becky Barnett, our purchasing manager, Barbara O'Brien, who is our accounts payable clerk, Lindsay Butler, accounting specialist, Holly Nichols, the lead payroll coordinator, Rhonda Stevens, accounting specialist, and Christina Grant, our assistant finance officer. So congratulations to this exemplary team who collaborate every day across Orange County schools to help us operate with efficiency and excellence every single day. We are so proud of your accomplishments, Ms. Rath, and we appreciate your support to everyone in the district. And so I think it's important to note that the finance department has earned this award consistently since at least 2015. It may be more than that, but at least 2015, and has not missed an opportunity to secure this distinction on behalf of the district during Rhonda's tenure as CFO, at least. This is no easy feat, and we are pretty fortunate for the steady and excellent work done by our finance team. Rhonda Rath, we appreciate you, and we love you. Congratulations.
They're a great finance team, and I could not do it without every one of them. They work very hard to take care of all of the staff in this district, and thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
And if I could also just mention, I just have to throw this in, so I was at Pathways Elementary School today. Could you go back, Ryan, to that picture? And Rhonda and her team, single-handedly, they saw some pallets of new curriculum in a hallway. Her team rushed over to the school and they moved all of that curriculum, and I'm talking about pallets worth of new curriculum, to a different location. So that's the kind of people and team that we have in the district, to roll up your sleeve and do whatever needs to be done. So it's important to share that as well. All right, that concludes the recognitions.
Excellent.
Sure.
So the next item is for the agenda adoption. I would request one change, Dr. Felder, if you're willing.
Yes, you're
The bus driver salary item,
Mhm.
since I know our director is here, if we could move that up to maybe the first item, and that way
Yes.
he can get out of here quickly.
Yeah.
I think that would help,
Okay.
if the board's willing to make that one change. All right, with that, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with that change?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the next item we have is public comment. The Board of Education welcomes public comment. Public comments are governed by the board policy on public participation at board meetings, specifically policy 2310 and North Carolina General Statute 143 through 318.17. A person wishing to address prior to the board regular meeting, comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When you're 3 minutes in, the speaker must stop speaking immediately. Yield time to other speakers will not be permitted. No profanity or vulgar language will be permitted, or personal abuse against any person. Public comment should not address any specific confidential student or personnel matter. If you wish to address a matter that may require identifying either a student or employee, please first direct your inquiry to the superintendent for assistance on the process to address your concern. With that, who do we have first?
Jeff Barger is first.
Thank you very much. I'll be speaking tonight on behalf of my daughter, Kate Barger, who is a senior at Orange High School. These are her words that I want to bring to you this evening. What FFA means to me. FFA has been an enormous part of my life since I entered high school. It has changed not only how I move through the world, but the way I view myself and my worth as a person and as a student. And I'm not the only one. My fellow teammates spend hundreds of hours every single year to help grow ourselves and our chapter. We participate in FFA all 12 months of the year, whether that's community service, fundraising, or hosting events for members. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we will continue to be active in this life-changing program well into our adult lives. Before I entered agricultural classes, I often found myself struggling to enjoy school. I was bored and allowed myself and my happiness to be entirely dictated by what grades showed up each week in Power School. Academics was my entire personality, and I didn't have a strong identity outside of that. But the first time I went through an ag class with my teacher, Mr. Latta, it opened my eyes to the way school was supposed to feel. I was excited every day to learn new things and to develop skills I wouldn't have access to otherwise. Instead of basing my self-worth on A's and B's, I prided myself on being able to use power tools, build furniture, and even evaluate dairy cattle. These classes have become a refuge for me over the years because I knew no matter what that the ag department would care about me as a person before they cared about me as a grade or a test score. Mr. Latta and Watkins and Ms. Cates are some of the most trusted adults in my life. I wouldn't trade my years in FFA away for anything in the world. Agricultural education saved me and has made my high school years worth it. As a senior, all I can ask for now is a chance to give back to the program that has helped raise me. Traveling to national convention this fall is a once-in-a-lifetime experience to meet people who feel as strongly and connect as passionately to agriculture and technical education. While it's true that I wouldn't be competing in Indianapolis, I would have the opportunity to attend and participate in daily leadership conferences and sessions that would help me develop personally and give me skills and knowledge to bring back to the program here at home. National Convention is a unique opportunity for our team to grow not only closer together, but to gain experience and knowledge on personal growth, leadership, goal setting, and acts of service and charity to teach our own chapter. FFA has always focused on raising kind, respectful, and wise leaders for the future. Without it, I would not be the person I am today, self-assured, prepared for the future, and confident in myself and others. This experience will be a formative moment in my life and the lives of my teammates as we continue to grow together. None of us will forget what FFA has given us over the years, and we only hope to give back that same level of love and commitment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Amanda?
Okay, next is Vaughn Compton.
So I'm Vaughn Compton. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak. In the past, I've been to 4 national FFA conventions. I've drove to 3 of them, carried kids to Louisville, Kentucky. I flew to one in Indianapolis. It was a unique experience going to all of them. We had a good flight out there. We used public transportation to get from the airport to the convention center and our hotel. But the next day, the kids decided that they wanted to go to Indianapolis Speedway. They wanted to go to the National Museum, and we didn't have no way to get around. And no public transportation was available. So Mr. Wagner, who was a retired teacher, and we rented a stretch limousine, and we rode around with those kids so they would have the opportunity to do the things that they wanted to do. Now, and that didn't, we paid for all of that out of our pocket. That didn't cost the kids one thing, but we did get to go around Indianapolis Speedway in a stretch limousine because they let everybody come in, drive all the way around, and we stopped at the finish line and they got out to kiss the bride. So, but we don't, and driving is a lot of fun with kids. And I don't think this policy needs to be changed. I think we need to continue to let teachers and parents drive to conventions and all. We can't be scared of our shadow, and that's what society has become. Everybody is scared of everything. We don't need to look at the bad things. We need to look at the good that's coming out of everything that we do in life, and that's including all the things that FFA kids get to do. So if I had the opportunity to go, I would drive again and take kids, and I would feel safe doing it. And I don't want this thing to change. I want it to stay just like it is. I talked to parents, teachers from other schools. Some of them go, and that's a vacation for them. They take week trips to get to national convention. They stop, like you're in California and you driving to Indianapolis. They got the whole trip planned. If they can do it, we can do it. A lot of school systems have big passenger vans, Suburbans, Ford Expeditions to carry kids in. Teachers and parents get to drive in and take them. So I don't think that needs to change. We need to keep doing just like we're doing. And if we don't, I'm gonna be terribly disappointed, and this community is too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Lauren, remind me.
Hosai.
Hosai, okay. Lauren Hosai, I forgot.
Good evening, board members and community guests. I'm Laura Hosai, a senior at Orange High School, and I'm currently serving as the Orange FFA president. I want to take a moment to say that I appreciate the chance to speak to the board about the importance of the leadership team being approved to attend the 2020 National FFA Convention alongside the horse judging team. In 2019, my family and I moved to North Carolina from Colorado. As a freshman in a new school, new town, and new state, I had no idea what was ahead of me, and I was frankly a little scared of what path Orange High School was going to lead me down. But I found a new home on that first day of school, and that was the Orange High School Ag Department. I could have never imagined how much Orange FFA would impact my life. Although my time in the program was not traditional due to battling online school, I still dove headfirst into my classes and all my activities that were offered over Zoom. I continued to be so active through Zoom because in the state of uncertainty, I knew that FFA was always going to be there for me. Over the past 3 years, I have had the honor of competing on various career development teams, attending state and regional leadership conferences and conventions, serving as a chapter officer, and serving as a regional officer for 2 years. Each of these experiences have grown me as a leader in many different ways. Moreover, I've been able to connect with FFA members that share the same gold standards as I do while I wear this blue corduroy jacket. As an FFA member, there have been goals that I've set to accomplish my time going through the Orange FFA program. One of those goals is to attend the national convention before I graduate. I have been patient and disappointed that our chapter has not been able to attend its annual trip due to travel restrictions over the past few years. Yet, I still respect that there is a reason for every decision that was made. As I started working with the leadership team this summer, there was a glimpse of hope that we would be able to start making plans to attend national convention in person this year. This trip is not just a time away from school. It is a chance for us to grow our leadership skills, enhance our civic duties, and apply what we do in the classroom to an organization that is deeply rooted in America. We ask that the leadership team is approved to attend the national convention as a school-sponsored trip and travel alongside the horse judging team to support our own and to appreciate the next generations of leaders that FFA is developing across the nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren. Travis Posey.
Travis Hosfly, and I thank you all for allowing me to bring to the board my concerns about Orange High School's proposed national FFA convention trip and the denial of the leadership team's request to be approved to attend the national convention as a school-sponsored event. I'm here tonight to express our complete and 100% support of the proposal that the Ag Department staff submitted on June 11th to the leadership of the school. I ask first that the leadership team is recognized as a school-sponsored trip and that these students be approved for travel with the competing horse judging team to the National FFA Convention. Secondly, I would ask that students allowed to be driven by the school staff and vehicles due to uncertain flight cancellations and the ability to have a mode of transportation in a very large convention area. Once at the destination, public transportation is not always guaranteed, and I believe are many safety issues that can arise by limiting transportation availability while in Indianapolis at the convention. When we moved to North Carolina in 2019, we did extensive research on where we would relocate our family and looked at the school districts to guide us in that decision. A strong, active FFA program was an absolute must for both our two girls. After researching and speaking to 7 different schools within a 30-minute drive of my job, we chose Orange High School because it is deeply rooted and had a very active ag and FFA program. One of the deciding factors for us was that the historic commitment of the program to support the students in building their futures from the leadership development conferences, specifically the National FFA Convention. Our daughters and the leadership team have endured the last couple of years being held back by COVID closures, travel restrictions, event planning red tape, yet they pivoted, adapted, and exceeded at a level in state-level competitions and community-based services, while holding a program together with positive and optimistic leadership, only to be told in their final year of high school and the last opportunity to attend the national convention as an FFA student, they may not be approved to go, and what was worse, that there really wasn't no explanation given. It seems that these kids have had nothing but barriers after barrier put in front of them. I can go on for another 3 minutes, list to you the countless meetings, endless fundraising, community outreach activities, public speaking engagements, late nights, countless early mornings, and miles of travel to chapter, district, regional, and state competitions, and many smiles and some tears my daughter and this team has endured for the FFA chapter. They represented Orange High School and Orange School District at the highest level of excellence. They deserve to attend the national convention as a leadership of 6 and alongside the competition team of the horse judging team, with the ag staff and recognized by the district as a school-sponsored activity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Durham.
Hey there, how are y'all doing?
How are you?
Good. I'll be speaking from the hard tonight. I don't have anything prepared, but my name's Sam Durham. I'm a senior at Orange High School, and I'm a 9th generation farmer. I competed this year in the horse evaluation team, and we won states with myself ranking high individual and 2 girls in the top 10, which is extremely rare. In 2019, we did compete, and we placed first as well, but we did not have the opportunity to attend national convention because of COVID. Now, allowing us and the other group of students to go to national convention would just be the most amazing opportunity for all of us. It would allow us new leadership ideas to bring back to our chapter, and it would also allow us to bring back new learning abilities for the upcoming students in the CDE career development events in our chapter. Now, by doing this, we ask that you're letting us drive. That way we don't miss any flights, and we're on time and prompt to all of our competitions. If we miss just one competition, if we're late to registration, we are not allowed to participate, and by doing that, that would disqualify us, and that would just be detrimental to what we put in. Most kids in high school, they're thinking about sports. They put in the time to go to practice, they buy cleats, they drive to games. Well, we do the same thing. We're buying steno pads, we buy bright colored blazers to give oral reasons to judge so that we stand out. We put countless hours into this competition, and we just want to make sure that it's seen all the way through. So I'm asking you today to just take in that what we're saying, and just to allow us to drive to this competition so that we can represent Orange High School on the behalf of y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that's all. Public comment.
All right. The next item is the consent agenda. I am aware that there's multiple requests to pull the FFA trip from the agenda. I will recommend that we do that right after this, and that way parents and families don't have to sit through the whole agenda. Are there any other items to pull from agenda? Or consent, I should say?
Consent.
Yes, sorry. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the modified personnel report and the FFA trip pulled?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. So with that, we'll move to the FFA discussion. Do we have staff to discuss it, or?
I don't believe so, in terms of, Mr. Johnson is not here tonight, and Dr. Green, I believe she is here. Is Dr. Green available? Hi, Dr. Green. So Dr. Green is our Chief Academic Officer, and I'm going to also ask Mr. Abley if you want to also join.
Good evening.
Good evening. So this is the recommendation for the FFA trip, and if you would like to just give us a little background on it, so we can have a discussion. One thing that I noticed on the recommendation, for example, it lists 5 people, but I've been told it's actually 6 instead of 5 on the recommendation.
Well, I can speak to that.
Okay.
So that's new information, and we can adjust to whomever fits the areas of, you know, who needs to attend the meeting. So as you know, it was updated today to reflect the officers per a conversation with Ms. Braxton and Mr. Johnson. And so it is reflective of that adjustment. But if the numbers are still not right, because we do need to know exactly who falls into the 2 categories, officers and those who are competing, we can make further adjustments.
Okay. Yeah, I heard the original number was 7, but a member happens to be the kicker on the football team and cannot make it, so the number changed to 6.
Okay.
So, anyway.
Yeah, we can make that adjustment.
And I
not
think
a
the
problem.
adjusted one says 10 even. Yeah, the one that we got updated today says 10.
Okay.
All
So
right.
that's good forward.
If I can just quickly clarify.
Sure, you
Okay,
can.
Sorry, please. There are 4 students on the course judging competition, and there are 6 students that will go to join the leadership conference. So that's a total of 10 students, 2 staff, a total of 12.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon.
Sorry. Thank you for letting me interject that.
So, okay, well, I'll just, I'll facilitate this discussion, let me facilitate it. The 2 issues that I heard from the community, one was the number of people, that seems to be okay, that's fine. The second one is driving to the event, it's a 10-hour trip. So, any background or comments on that before the board deliberates or discusses?
So, Mr. Atherton, members of the board, when we talk about student safety and engagement on trips, there have been protocol and procedures that are used by the district, not only within the regulations, and we do have a series of field trip forms that help guide that. One of the items within the policy, although it may not be as clear as we would like, certainly having this field trip under review, there is some confusion. When the policy talks about driving small groups of students to area meetings, it's pretty questionable, is Indianapolis an area meeting? As the intent was written within the regulation, guiding that protocol as far as the access to using vehicles. The district has, in the past, had practice when crossing over state lines, we do not use activity buses. When we have to go to another school district within the state of North Carolina, we have cooperative agreements. Our district has responded many times, whether it's on a weekend, 11 to 12 o'clock at night, another team that's traveling back from a basketball game, let's say in Greensboro, breaks down on the side of the road. We respond out to the highway. We've loaned buses out. We've given them every opportunity to make sure they are able to contact the parents. We stay in contact with their transportation department because we're right here and we can respond to that. When we go outside of state lines, it's very difficult. Tort claims has told us previously that our wreckers that are covered under state tort insurance are not covered to go out of state. So if we have an activity bus that goes out of state and breaks down, that can cause some issues with us trying to go out of state and bring that bus back across state lines. And then any accidents that would happen, obviously then we have accident protocol within state, which includes commercial drivers having drug testing, accident investigations, working with law enforcement, et cetera. That gets more difficult when you're outside of state lines. So the practice with field trips has been use of activity buses within state lines. Outside of the state, it has been commercial travel, commercial transportation, such as the Robotics Club that went earlier this spring to Houston. They flew and utilized commercial transportation because the risk certainly can't be none on anything. But certainly there's less risk involved when you're using commercial transportation vehicles, whether they're rented vehicles or vehicles that are operated by individuals under a commercial license. There's industry standards, there's federal standards, there's also those companies, whether it's a rental car company, et cetera, they have inspections that are required to be completed on the vehicles. If the vehicle breaks down, they're going to provide a vehicle in place of the vehicle that was taken or utilized. So when we talk about the trip, the recommendation certainly was following practice, utilize commercial modes of travel. Certainly understand that there has been lots of disruptions with airlines and other modes of travel right now. But that was the recommendation. But the rationale for the travel was certainly what we just mentioned, the practice and the policy, the way it was written, discussing utilizing personal vehicles for area meetings, et cetera, did not feel that Indianapolis met that qualification. There has been an issue in the district previously with rental vehicles being out of state that was in an accident. It is very difficult, again, to do accident investigation and follow protocol when things are happening outside the state. Any drivers by policy that are driving students in vehicles must have the DMV records check completed. And so we've talked with the attorney in reference to what that looks like and making sure that clean driving records are happening as well. And don't know, as far as other trips, certainly there was a trip that was approved a couple years ago, and they did drive out of state, and take vehicles out of state. But the precedent has been out of state was commercial transportation. As far as the trip being school sponsored, that is determined at the school level. There was discussion in reference to the competition, the earlier competition, and certainly proud of the students of winning the state. Once we reviewed that information, we advised that it sounded like it met all the criteria and definition of being a school-sponsored event because they went to the state competition under the name of the high school with the school sponsorship, and so we felt like, so I don't think that's been in question for my lens as far as it being a school-sponsored trip. There has been questions about the additional individuals, how many individuals should be traveling with the trip. I think you heard tonight, heard Ms. Braxton say there certainly is a value in the opportunity that is provided to students. And so the other question that came up with the trip was where students were staying. And I don't recall ever having students staying outside of hotels or other commercial places to stay due to security, due to the nature of making sure that the places are safe, they meet all the standards, there's no issues with tenants, landlords, people who have keys coming in, et cetera, who aren't supposed to be there on property that you would run into with private businesses or somebody who owns property. And I'm not aware of practices that would have allowed staying in Airbnbs or other things. We would not advise those. Certainly, speaking with and talking with Mr. Ramey, is as we look at our practices and our procedures, we recognize we've got some work to clean up some of the policies to take out some of the confusion. But as far as the trip and the parameters around the trip, it is within the authorization of the superintendent to approve trips and to set parameters based on the trips. So I
Thank
hope that
you.
helps a little bit on
Thank you,
Yes, thank
how we got here.
Mr. Aberle. And so just to be clear again, very, very proud of our students' accomplishments, but also wanting them to have this opportunity to ensure safety, right? And of course, there are the liability concerns, but the primary driver of this is safety. And I do know other districts are also revisiting their policies and tightening them up in an effort to ensure that when our students travel, that we're doing so as safely as possible. Mr. Ramey, I don't know if you have anything else to add, because as Mr. Abley said,
Sure.
we have had conversations.
I'll refrain from getting into, what good policy that's for the board and the administration, but just for quick legal parameters, there is no law that would either prohibit or require the use of private vehicles. That's really the issue. It's my understanding the administration approved the trip, and the question is to whether to allow the use of private vehicles to transport the students out of state. There is no law that gives you the right answer there. And as Mr. Abley, I think, accurately said, your policy says out-of-state trips are subject to review and approval by the superintendent. Superintendent's decision has been to allow the trip subject to the established protocols. Again, not board policy, but it's been the protocol to require use of charter vehicles or commercial travel, not private vehicles. The board can certainly decide otherwise. I would just encourage you to think through practical and legal issues. To some extent, we can mitigate, is the word I would use, not eliminate legal risk with well-drafted forms, waivers and such. But that's a reduction in legal risk, not an elimination. More importantly, in this outside of my expertise, there's practical risk. Obviously, generally speaking, kids are safer on a large charter bus with a driver who's subject to random drug tests, et cetera, than in a privately owned vehicle. But that's a balance for you all to talk about. I think Mr. Ebley framed it, and Dr. Bubba framed the issue as well.
All right, thanks, everybody. So, discussion from board?
Can I ask a question? It's my did I do it? No, I didn't wait. Go ahead, Dr. Moore. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun again.
That's all right. So, just going through policy 3320-P, section 12. It says 12 to 15 passenger vans for non-conforming vehicles, and these vehicles cannot be used to transport students. So, it also states privately owned vehicles may be used for only small groups of students participating in contests, competitions, or area meetings. So there are some permission forms, Form C, the DMV background check required, all that language is there, so I feel like they should be allowed to drive their personal vehicle based off what the policy says.
And just a quick clarification, that's in the protocol, the procedures. It's not actually board policy. That was adopted by the administration. But you're right. There are some forms that would be set up that could be used in this situation. But Mr. Ebley and I have discussed this. What the board policy says is that out-of-state field trips are subject to review and approval by the superintendent, which is why it came to the administration in the first instance. So in other words, the administration could say no. Or they could say yes, and if you are going to use private vehicles, you have to do X, Y, and Z. But again, the board can certainly take a fresh look at this.
So what we don't have is a regulation on what that driving record needs to be.
Yeah.
Because when the driving record is pulled and the employee provides that driving record, is 12 miles over a speed limit 3 times in the last year acceptable? Is a DUI within the last 3 years acceptable? Is running a red light acceptable? Is failure to yield, accident, like what is the standard when it says check a driver's record? There has not been a standard established as to what that is.
Ann?
I'm sorry. My understanding is that Ms. McDade and Mr. Watkins are gonna be the drivers. Am I correct?
I've not seen the updated form, so I cannot comment on what
Okay.
the drivers are.
And I was wondering, are they taking their personal vehicles or renting a vehicle? Does anybody know?
I think they've proposed both.
And also, I'm gonna throw this in, being the parent of a child who went to National Convention one year, and my husband and I went along. There's nothing like it. I've never experienced anything like it. It's wonderful for these students to go to compete, to do what they need to do and what they love. And I'm gonna recommend that they drive out there with their teachers and have a wonderful time and learn a lot.
All right, others? Anybody else? Here.
I'm just really excited for the students to get to have this opportunity, and I know how significant these big events, like the robotics event, and we had so many students participate in that and benefit from that. I'm really glad that we have a larger group of students going, and really supportive of them going. Sometimes driving is just the easiest way for it to happen. I hope we can have sufficient waiver forms that mitigate that legal risk.
Anybody else?
May I just answer a question? You know, we are all not here, but you asked the question, are they renting or driving their personal vehicles?
Mhm.
They would be agreeable to either based on what the board and the administration would allow. And also to note that they both do have their Orange County Schools CDL license, because they both have their license to drive the activity buses when they go on field trips. I just thought I would clarify that.
Thank you, Jenny.
So no other comments?
Just, I would love to see them go, I'd love to see them drive, and so I'm all for that.
So I'll just make a quick comment. So I really appreciate everybody that's called me over the weekend and throughout this, and the emails, and you know, the students creating the PowerPoint to tell us who haven't gone really what's included and the learning opportunities, and you know, it is very helpful when a student reaches out to the board to give their perspectives. It really matters, so thank y'all for doing that. I'll just share that at work, I had my team come into town, and 5 of them could not make it because of travel, and they were in different physical cities. And they were just canceled, and there was nothing they could do. They showed up in a day. So I will be very supportive of the students riding with the staff with liability waivers. But with that, do we have a motion? Oh, well, we got to get clarity around it. So I can help, or if somebody wants to say a motion.
Yeah, I just want to mention one other point that came up in some conversation. It seems like the plan is to have the commercial hotel stay. The only thing that was really a question was the personal vehicles.
Correct. Everyone that called me, I think the clarity that was given to me was early on there was which one can we use, and my understanding is they already have hotel reservations, so that's not in question whatsoever. I believe it's just the driving portion.
Okay, so my motion would be that we approve the out-of-state travel with the superintendent's parameters, with the exception of the commercial transportation requirement being waived, so that personal vehicles may be used, or rental vehicles may be used with appropriate waivers.
Second?
Second from Andrea. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank y'all very much. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you to our students.
Yes, thank you.
And good luck.
Feel free to, you know, as we transition, the next item is the proposal to increase bus driver salaries.
Mr. Abberton,
It's okay.
Mr. Aberlee, could you please invite, we need Mr. Albert and Ms. Rapp. And I think Ms. Hatcher. Are Ms. Hatcher and Ms. Rapp also joining? Okay. Thank you.
So good evening. We have a proposal before you this evening, increase bus driver salaries. As we've discussed earlier, this year in 2022, we wanted to keep our program robust, and we wanted to make sure that we had incentives in place to ensure that we had a full bus fleet for the start of this academic school year. You're gonna have the next slide. And so some of the incentives that are in place that are continuing this year, we do have the paid medical examination fee, and that is a new requirement the last couple of years. All CDL drivers must pass a medical clearance. That also ensures that they are able to drive without major concerns with medical emergencies or interactions with medication, etc. That's performed outside of the school district. There's an independent medical reviewers that take care of that, but we do pay for that fee that was required as part of the CDL license. And so we immediately wanted to make sure that wasn't an additional burden on our drivers with this new requirement. So that was not a local requirement, again, it's a CDL requirement. We do reimburse all CDL license fees and renewal fees. And then we implemented retention bonuses for drivers, referral bonuses, perfect attendance bonuses, and sign-on bonuses. So all of those incentives have been in place to not only recruit, but also to make sure that we're keeping drivers once we have them here at Orange County, because we do feel like we've got a great family within our transportation department, and that they really are providing everything they can to get students to school and home safely each and every day. Next slide. And so some of our challenges that we're facing is our pay is no longer competitive as individual districts around us continue to find the same struggle with drivers and are raising salaries. We've reviewed, and it looks like we're right now about $1.13 per hour shorter than surrounding districts. We're currently having a shortage of 15 bus drivers, and our bus driving positions are difficult to staff just because of hours on the clock and off the clock. It's very difficult. We do know that due to affordability of housing within the county, you've heard previously about staff members having difficulty, especially some of our line workers or hourly workers being able to afford living in Orange County. So that's huge. And with gas prices rising and the cost of commuting rising, it is difficult for bus drivers to drive all the way in the morning at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 5:45, drive for an hour, 2 hours, leave, go to another job, and then come back and repeat that process at the end of the day. So just how bus shifts operate and work makes it difficult. And then one of the items that we have not had a requirement in the district in recent times, it certainly could have taken place years ago, but we don't have a requirement that staff, as a condition of employment, have to drive buses, such as custodians. When I was a principal in another district, my custodians were bus drivers as well, cafeteria staff, teacher assistants. They were all required to be part of the bus fleet and were bus drivers. And so understanding this day and age, not only if there was a requirement, but just staff's comfort of in that position and being able to be a bus driver and having that as a condition of employment. We've heard staff, when we recommended this internally previously, that that they just don't feel comfortable doing that, wouldn't want to do that. Would there be issues if I'm dual employed and I have an accident on a bus? Am I going to lose my TA position? Concerns with that. And then, as we just mentioned, now having the medical clearance, it's possible individuals would not pass medical clearance, and so we'd have to accommodate for that as a requirement. But it is an area certainly that could be explored as we think about challenges and incentives to have bus drivers. And there are many districts around the state that it is a requirement for individuals as some of the classified positions to be bus drivers as well. And so our recommendation, looking, again, across the board would be to increase the hourly pay for bus drivers to $1.23 per hour. That would raise our starting pay to $17.10 per hour. And in the abstract materials, you see some of the surrounding districts and what they're currently paying. That would give us and keep us competitive at this time. And then every step on our salary increase, we would recommend increasing as well, because one of the issues we've had is we raised the bus driver salary, especially when we were first moving our salaries to meet the living wage for Orange County, that we were raising initial salaries, but we really were not raising individuals that have been here and were committed with us for many, many years. And so we do ask, if there is an increase to the starting pay, that we consider increasing the pay across the board for all of our drivers, and the cost of that is approximately $115,000. I'll pause there because I recognize Mr. Larry Albert, our Director of Transportation, who has been putting in many hours behind the scenes to make the program work, and Ron Rath, our Finance Officer. Larry, if you want to talk about any additional challenges or items that have led up to the recommendation. And, you know, Ms. Rath loves to talk about finances, so I'll stop.
I'm gonna go first before she cuts me up over here. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, the whole board, Orange County. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and advocate for this. We have struggled, the whole district struggled with being competitive with pay across the board, across departments. This year would, in my words, put us as like trailblazers of transportation departments. You know, it's easy to try to stay up with surrounding districts and things of that nature of starting pay. But to bring everybody's salary up, like Mr. Obley said, you know, for the dedicated employees that have been here, you know, raising their hourly rates as well is something that I think would be more appealing to bring some, you know, licensed drivers across county lines or bring them from outside. So I just feel that this would be another step in, like I said, making it more appealing to come to Orange County and work. The incentives, I have seen, like our last update, I've seen a lot more people applying and coming in the door. And there again, you get one, you lose one, you get one, you lose one for one reason or the next. But can I speak on the TAs and things of that nature? So I think that the TAs being required, if you will, to drive buses would be a great option. I mean, it would take two TAs, an elementary school TA to drive an afternoon route. A high school TA would drive a morning route. Those two TAs would cover a whole route. So I mean, it wouldn't take many to be very beneficial to try to bridge the gap that we have. So it's gonna be something that I would love to put something together and present to you at a later date. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Bonnie, did you have a question?
JR,
Yes, ma'am.
just, when, last year I went at the bus driver appreciation event, one of the things that I remembered was the drivers really wanted more hours. And it has to do with Patrick's point about that middle day, that hole in the middle of the day. And didn't last year, I thought last year we gave them assignments in the cafeterias or something.
Yes, ma'am.
Give them extra hours.
Yes, ma'am.
So is that are we doing, that's gone?
We still have drivers that help child nutrition. We have drivers that help CTE. We still transport students in the middle of the day. So a lot of drivers, if they want extra hours, they're getting it. Right now, we're really having to call around and find the ones that have time in the middle of the day. So it's working out.
Yeah, and don't be sorry about that, Larry. So there's two programs. So what is happening now is it's where we have positions available, like CTE is a standard position because we have students who go different places during the day. And so that is positions that we have within the transportation department, and child nutrition has openings, and so those individuals are duly employed in our programs. what we utilized heavily last year was through ESSER dollars, the ability for other employees to push into all of our sites to provide additional assistance, and it was additional hourly rate and scale and the ability to tack on additional hours. That's no longer available because of funding, but as Larry said, when we do have positions, we certainly encourage them to be duly employed, and we do have to be very careful with child nutrition program, because what we don't want to do is push workers into an overtime rate, which causes us to raise our nutrition prices in the cafeteria to cover the additional time. But we are working to try to provide opportunities for individuals and even individuals, adjusting work schedules or what we need to do. So we find individuals in other areas that are CDL and want to drive, we will take them, and we will work with their supervisor to adjust their hours. So yes, if there's any TAs that are listening and want to be a bus driver, they'll qualify for all the bonuses, the incentives, and the sign-ons, and we will certainly try to work with their principals on what that would look like.
Any further questions?
I guess, yeah, where money's gonna come
Exactly. You read our mind.
Yeah, when we get to the budget presentation, which will be also later on this evening, you will see that there is a line item in the budget for the revenues associated above and beyond our per pupil funding, which is our fines and forfeitures revenues, as well as some of our interest on our investments. That those are kind of a placeholder in the budget now for anticipated cost increase associated with fuel or other consumables, which is where I would recommend that the funding for this item here be allocated. So it would be within the funds that we have received from the commissioners, including those fines and forfeitures revenues. We would shift them to the placeholder of consumables that we are anticipating increasing to salaries for our bus drivers.
Questions from the board?
Just to that, so is fines and forfeitures separate from the general fund?
It's separate from, it's a separate revenue source from the per pupil funding that we receive as a monthly appropriation, yes.
Yeah, so, but we don't have to, it's not restricted.
No.
So we could smash it all together and just take the 115.
Yes,
We don't need to restrict it, but you're saying,
No,
that's where I'm gonna find the money, but it's, all goes into one fund.
yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Other questions from any board members? I have one question. So if someone leaves the district and goes to another district, and they were here and they got the bonuses to sign and all that, and then they go to another district, we change this, and they want to come back, is there some kind of time limit before they could re-get the signing bonus, or are they immediately eligible for that?
That is a great question, because we've not crossed the threshold right now. It's just been a no, because you recently received the bonus, left, and you would be eligible coming right back in. That's something I think we need to review about the time frame, because that has not come up in the discussions as far as how long one would have to wait. Now, they certainly do get their years of experience and anything else that they'd be eligible for, but as far as the bonus, I think we need to just review, and I'll go back in the minutes to see if we put parameters on that. But I'm not recalling a parameter with a year that was set.
There's a parameter currently, but I do think it may warrant.
So your motion could include that.
Yes.
Do you all have a recommendation on what that would be?
What would be the least impact
I mean, to me, if someone receives a recruitment bonus, just bonuses in general, that there should be, I would think, a minimum of a 36-month period before an individual would be eligible for And that's been used before where I've been in districts and someone received a recruitment bonus and then the board turned around and gave employees bonuses. And they said, well, but that person's not eligible because you just got a recruitment bonus. I think 36 months would be appropriate. I think I've seen some less than that. I've seen some longer than that. So.
No, that sounds appropriate, but I would want to involve Ms. Hatcher.
Absolutely.
As part of that decision-making process. I don't know that we can provide that information tonight. I don't know if she's prepared to do that. May take some research.
Question regarding sign-on bonuses, and if individuals leave a length of time, they might be eligible for that again if they came back. For instance, we have a sign-on bonus for a bus driver. They get the sign-on bonus, they stay with us a year, they leave, and then want to turn around and come back, obviously. The question is, would they be eligible to get the sign-on bonus again? We're talking about a limitation or a limiting period before they do it.
Okay, that is not something that has been discussed, but it is something that would definitely need to be looked at. Currently, as you well know, that's why we have the installment plan in place, so that we don't get caught with people getting the bonus up front and then leaving. So that is definitely something that I would need to consult with legal on as to how we would handle that in the event if someone had a hiring bonus and they left early. Would they be eligible again? Right now, we don't have anything in place to address that. So that is a very good question, and I could definitely look into that and consult with legal.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess kind of related, my question would be, can we approve this without having, how would we make a motion to approve this without having that sorted out?
The recommendation this evening is about the hourly pay and the starting pay, which would be separate from the conversation or a motion on sign-on bonuses in general. So we would just be to what the recommendation is here, which is the increase in the hourly pay, starting pay, minimum threshold of $17.10, and then every driver going up $1.23 per hour.
Then they can bring back a recommendation for that other part after they have time to look at it.
I'll move the recommendation.
Dr. Felder, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to ensure that would the next board meeting be sufficient amount of time to bring a recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, so we approved the bonuses at the last meeting, right, there were one before recently. That's why it really helps tell, yeah, we're doing the hourly pay. I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank y'all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next is the full-service vending contract.
And I'll turn it over to Ms. Pitts, Director of Child Nutrition Services. No.
Okay, so good evening, Board Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Board, Dr. Felder, staff, and families. Orange County students are in school for 7 to 8 hours a day, or more if you include sports, clubs, and activities. And access to food, snacks, and drinks helps students stay fueled. Vending machines are a great option for schools because school nutrition programs have limited operational hours for meals, and students cannot run out in the middle of the day to grab a snack if they need one. The USDA has supported the idea of healthier options in vending machines and provided both guidelines and regulations for those machines. School vending machines that stock healthier option snacks and drinks limit students to choices to items that have either the first ingredient as a fruit, vegetable, a dairy product, or a protein food, or a grain product that meets the 50% whole grain by weight requirement. Meet the nutritional standards for calories, sugar, and fats, and provide students access to quality snacks to fuel their bodies and minds. The vending machines located at the 5 Orange County schools, middle schools, and high schools are stocked with snack options to meet the governmental requirements and provide convenience to our students without contributing to poor dietary habits. John Nutrition Services routinely monitors the vending machines to ensure that items added by the vendors are compliant with Smart Snack requirements. When students are limited to healthy snacks during the day, they start to develop habits that will stick with them throughout their lives. So the district's full-service vending bid was publicly posted, and after review, 2 vendors have been selected for approval. And they are Pepsi Bottling Venture for drinks, Canteen for the vended snacks. These 2 vendor contracts are being requested for approval by the board tonight for the 22-23 school year, with the option of 4 additional 1-year renewals. So I will pause for any questions at this time.
Questions? All right. Go ahead.
I just have a quick question. I saw the drink description attachment, but I didn't see the snack description attachment.
So snacks, it's up to the vendor as long as they are Smart Snack compliant.
Gotcha.
So our rules are they have to be Smart Snack compliant and they cannot contain any nut allergens in them. So we leave it up to them, but we do make sure that they price between a certain price point, you know, up to $1, so our students will be able to afford them.
All right, any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
All right, so our next item is capital funding appropriation and transfers. I'm going to be joined by Nick Mincy, our Director of Facilities and Maintenance. Nick previously has served in the role of Director of Facilities and Construction, and so while we have been searching for a Director of Facilities and Construction, he's been fulfilling both roles for the district, and we are looking forward to our Director of Facilities Construction being with us in a couple weeks. We are planning on an additional update on capital projects that were completed in the summer months, but we have identified few projects that we do feel like are urgent that we need to appropriate the funding for from our capital investment plan. And again, just for review, annually we submit to the board a 10-year capital investment plan, but only the current year, the fiscal year of the plan is funded by the Board of County Commissioners, except for years where there's additional funding that's multi-year, such as bonds, deferred maintenance, and supplemental deferred maintenance, and those were special additional allocations for capital that the county has made in the past. And so we just wanted to recognize and discuss that we do have our annual plan, but there are supplemental fundings as well. And so the first item is PRC 990, which is deferred maintenance. That was local capital that was set aside from the Board of County Commissioners over the years for classroom building improvements, project number 51045. We have a current balance of $1.736 million in that funding source. There is not specific projects identified to complete. And so what I'm bringing before you this evening is a plan for how the revenue would be spent. And then the actual bids and contracts would come back to the board. The first item is a safety security item, door and lock hardware replacements. We're requesting that from that 1.76 funded line item, that $1.2 million be set aside for door and lock hardware replacements for this fiscal year. That would be at Orange High School, Grady A. Brown Elementary School, Hillsborough Elementary School, and River Park Elementary School. Not only would that improve the lock set and issues with door strikes and plates in older buildings, it would also help prevent individuals from entering the campus due to malfunctions to door and lock hardware. We are, as one of the new items for this year, not only is our maintenance staff and outside individuals coming in to assist with door and lock hardware, replacements or repairs, but we do have a required monthly check that's submitted by our schools each month. The door and locks are being checked and reported any issues. And then with that, again, we would want to make sure that we're meeting any code compliance. The door and lock mechanisms, there are fire code restrictions and zoning restrictions, and we would make sure we are following on those. And then part of this project at Grady A. Brown Elementary School would be to provide a solution to close, have doors on some of the classrooms that are currently the open classroom design. So we're estimating $1.2 billion again. We would be taking bids for these projects, but this would help us by having the allocation. We could move forward with the bidding process. The second item would be, again, leaving the funding there for building improvements, and that would cover things such as furniture, lights, cabinetry, floors, again, for older schools. That balance from that $1.7 million would be $536,000, and that would go at Central Elementary School, Hillsborough Elementary School, Eflin Cheeks, and Grady Brown. What we have tried to do is we've been going through with the mechanical projects is while we are in classrooms and we're up in the ceilings and removing HVAC pipes and equipment, is going ahead and doing the ceiling tiles, doing it, the lights, painting. We've gone through, Mr. Mincy's worked at Central Elementary School and has replaced sinks in classrooms, new flooring areas, and a nice design there. And then we're in the process of putting in new cabinetry in the rooms as well. And so we want to continue that process at these 4 schools that are having mechanical upgrades as well. And so this is our proposal for this line item for the $1.76 million. Questions or comments about these projects?
I don't see any I do have one question, not about these specific recommendations, but one of the common themes I think I hear, and probably other board members, is the bathrooms at Orange High School. And is there any plans, or could some of this money be utilized to modernize those facilities?
So there is a project that's already identified. There is previous funding that's still allocated for that. We had hoped to have that project completed as part of the geothermal, was not completed.
Okay.
So restroom upgrades would be slated at Orange High School, River Park Elementary School, and Eflin Cheeks are the 3 schools for restroom improvement projects. Again, Orange High School had some set-aside money.
Okay.
We do have other CIP and capital money that can help supplement that project. So tonight, I'm not asking for additional funding, but just do know there is a project identified. There is, I'll get you a final number, but it's over $200,000 that was already allocated for restroom upgrades, and we will be moving forward to get that project completed as was originally planned.
Fantastic. Thank you for the clarity.
Can I just add one thing to that? So for Orange High School, one of the complications with Orange High School is not so much just the architectural side of the restrooms. In conjunction with doing that work and replacing floor tile and changing out toilet flanges, the infrastructure for the sanitary sewer tied into those are stacked on 3 floors. So as we were going through doing geothermal work by floor, we couldn't necessarily take one floor out because there were 2 floors still functioning below. So that really complicated a lot of those issues for how, I can't stop what goes downhill, as we say. So so that really complicated the ability to move some of those areas where there's single floors. We have made nice improvements to the 400 wing restrooms, and we did some improvements to the 100 wing and 200 wing upper restrooms because we could work our way down. So, but yes, there is still work to do.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
And we're still on, this is all coming out of the 990, right? We're not.
That's correct. Just that line item of 990. There's other 990 funding that's still in place, but this one I did not have specific projects identified, and these are high priorities. We felt would be a good use of those funds.
So you're gonna help close up some of the classrooms at Grady Brown?
Yes, ma'am.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Number two, this is PRC 930, and the PRCs are the tracking code numbers for our funding sources. So 930, again, it's another local capital line item, supplemental deferred maintenance. We currently have a balance of $7.55 million for fiscal year 23, which is this year. We're anticipating the county to give us an additional $5.489 million, so that will give us a balance under 930 of $13 million. As you may recall, this was a 3-year project that the county had $30 million. They divided between the Orange County schools and Chapel Hill Carver City schools, and so this is our allocation for this. We have been purposely holding this money in anticipation of the mechanical systems and the bond funding projects using some of this for overrun, but there are a couple projects that we feel are important. Part of that you've already approved, which is the River Park Phase 2, which is the mechanical, and it was the classroom improvements and the building renovations last year. So we used $2.1 million, or we'll use $2.1 million for that project to be completed. We do have identified $1.5 million for mobile units for construction and capacity. We'll talk more about Mifflin Cheeks in just a few minutes in the next topics. But it's not just mobile units, because when we bring mobile units in, we have to have furniture, the fixtures, the equipment, the technology, the fire access, intercoms, everything else with it. So it looks like, 1.5 million seems to be a lot for 6 or 8 classrooms for a couple of campuses, but it's all the other infrastructure, technology, and work that goes into it. I would love to be well under that budget. But in comparison, the project at Orange High School, where we brought in mobile units,
8 classroom units.
that was about a $500,000 minimal project there, and include ramping and other areas. So we just want to make sure we have a plan moving forward. And again, Grady Brown is chosen because of the western surge that we're seeing with new developments, plus the amount of mechanical projects that need to be completed. And as was Ms. Hauser just mentioned, with open classrooms, it's not like we could just move one classroom and nobody will hear the noise. If we're doing construction or renovation in one classroom, there are 8 classrooms that are going to hear that noise. And so having mobile units on that site will assist. They do have space. There is a large area where there's already a mobile unit, so we do feel like that would allow us a campus with expansion. Mifflin Cheeks is another one. Based on the mechanical upgrades and the needs of the school, we are going to need mobile units there, and as we're going to talk about, we've got capacity issues. So certainly, although we had anticipated originally having the mobile units for construction, we see a need that would tie nicely into having that for capacity as well. And so with the other renovations that need to happen on that campus with sewer, restrooms, et cetera, it will be a good project to have there. And so that's the mobile units. Elementary playground equipment, we are asking to set aside $1.5 million. This is probably the largest capital investment that I know of from the county just for playground and equipment. We normally set aside $100,000 to a couple $100,000 a year. And we wanted to make this a priority. We have had to remove equipment at Central Elementary School, Hillsborough Elementary School. We did hire an independent consultant to come review all of our playgrounds. I'm expecting that report tomorrow. And then we would like to immediately go to bid on any other equipment that is ending service life. Now, if any of that equipment is identified as being unsafe, then we'll remove it. And we just ask our schools and our staff and our parents patience, as we know we anticipate supply chains disruptions and getting new equipment installed, but we will certainly supplement with other equipment that they can use outdoors to get their energy out. But the first 2 projects would be at Central and Hillsborough, just because we have already removed equipment. And then the remaining funds, we would go through the prioritized projects based on the recommendation in the assessment to have a plan. And then we'll continue in our capital plan moving forward, have the replacement cycles that are clearly identified for the playground equipment. And then the third item there is the remaining funds in 990, which is, I'm anticipating to be 7.9 million. We still continue to hold that for mechanical systems, and that would supplement the bond for the mechanical systems, which are still being completed. As I mentioned, we're finishing out phase 2 at River Park. We're in the process for Central Elementary School. We've done the electrical upgrades there. We're moving through for the design and bidding of the, rebidding of the mechanical. Mifflin is getting ready for mechanical bids, and then we're still working on A.L. Standback, Hillsborough Elementary School, and Grady Brown. And so the $8 million will help carry us with the projects. And we certainly are looking like, although inflation is extremely high right now, we do expect to have some better bid markets right now coming on board. There seems to be some easing of the climate, but still, you know, we're in a tough spot with the criticalness of getting work completed, the supply and labor shortages, and then watching our funding to make sure that we have the funding allocated to get the projects completed. Any questions about these projects under 930?
I have some. One is related to the next section. Just on the mobile units, do we put in mobile units with restrooms?
It depends. We can, if we have the services that allow for it. The sewer lines, the lift stations, pump stations. It just depends on where the units go and if they're available. Certainly that's a preference. However, it's been difficult sometimes to be able to do that, which means when you put mobile units on there, you have students coming and going for any restroom needs throughout the day. And so it does, mobile units, there is a different security and safety plan we'll need to address and talk about and discuss. There will probably be some fencing that will be required as part of this, and certainly we have to meet all the ADA codes with ramps. But to your question about restrooms, if we're able to have those in there, yes. If we put pre-K students in there, it would be required. They have to have access to restrooms. Most modern kindergarten classrooms include restrooms within the design, so it would just be, you know, what we're able to do.
Okay, and that's supplemental funding. I remember originally it had $1 million, $1.5 million for the plumbing problems at Effland, which are still outstanding, as I understand it. The faculty restrooms are not. So is that going to be done?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, not on the list are plumbing upgrades that are going to be completed at Orange High School, River Park Elementary School, and Effland Cheeks Elementary School. Those are our next 3 projects. We're going to bid those together. And so I don't know about the 1.5.
It's roughly something like that.
Certainly, yes, we need to get those projects completed. If we don't have the funding for those projects, then I'll be back to talk about how we're going to get those completed, because it's definitely a need that needs to happen. And then the third one is our 999 capital investment plan, which is recurring each year. $538,144 is sitting in safety and security. We have completed the projects that were scheduled under that, which was our radio system upgrades and our vestibule systems and our camera systems for the schools. And we still have additional line items that have safety and security now. So I want you to hear me say, we're not doing the projects that were scheduled. We certainly have already done the projects that were scheduled, and we still have additional line items devoted to safety and security. And so I felt like this line item really could go to roofs and canopies, because we do not have earmarked line item for these projects. And so at Hillsborough Elementary School, we're now using the Learning Center as part of our expansion on the campus this year, providing additional services to students within the building. And so some of our special classes moved out to the Learning Center, plus we're still using it for parents who come in for services on an intermittent basis because they qualify under exceptional children to be served. And so they just come in, and it's a great building because they're not really within the school building and campus. They can come right into the Learning Center and then have their appointment and then meet the specialist and then leave. But there's no canopy system there connecting that building to the main campus. And so in order to utilize that or continue to utilize that with services to the general school population in school, we need to address not having a campus system and walkway system that connects the buildings. And so we would propose to have that designed and utilize the funding for that. And at Mifflin Cheeks Elementary School, I reviewed last Friday with Dr. Felder. There are some continual draining issues out there. Maintenance has looked at that. They have put some mitigation things in place. However, during very, very heavy rains, the leader systems and the gutter systems and the underground systems just cannot keep up with the amount of water, especially when we're getting these very, very torrential heavy rainstorms of 1 inch or 2 per hour. It's just not enough to keep up. Plus, with the building having settled, there's outside most of the classrooms, there's an 8 to 10 foot concrete pad. And that pad is now negative slope towards the building. So any water that's coming is just coming right back towards the building. And so there's a few options. I mean, we could dig up the completely outside of the building. And as you know, when we start doing that, there may be quite a few other things that are uncovered in how we put that back together. But another option we looked at is if we can extend a canopy system from the roof out beyond that, we would actually be able to create some drainage beyond the negative slope and be able to provide it. It will also give us a shelter area. And as we think about our response to COVID, it would increase the amount of space we have for picnic tables or outside areas, because once we put the mobile units up there, we may end up losing some of their shelter and picnic spaces. So this would actually help us with that. But again, we'll go through the design phase and look at both options to add a canopy system or to do a different drainage type project. But we definitely need to make this a priority for the drainage, because they do get heavy rains that come in the building.
I know we've been making progress and the rains are getting worse, but just, you know, water in that school has been a problem for almost a decade. And I was wondering if we could invite an outside expert to take a look at it from a stormwater management perspective, right? Because we keep doing things and we're making improvements, but I wonder, and do we have a legitimate stormwater management system there?
Well, we do, we have plans. I mean, we follow all the regulations, and we also have a consultant who comes and inspects all of our plans and all of our ponds on an annual basis, and we do. But there's not one for this school because of when it was designed and when it was put in. Yes, we need to have civil engineering look at this and review this, but that would, I believe, as we do this project, we would be looking and having the architect and civil engineer look at the options, look at the plans. We certainly are not going to spend money to do this if the experts say you're going to create a bigger problem than you're trying to solve. So we will not move forward with this without the appropriate architectural engineering.
I was wondering if we could just have an outsider just come in, take a look and say, here's, and one of the things that's of issue to me is, I spoke to the county about expanding the campus about a year ago, and they said if we don't put a stormwater management system in, that will not be an option. So, and I don't know if that's in our plans, but I just wonder if it couldn't be that expensive to do, and it just might help prevent some problems, just to get.
It depends. Any of our building renovations, such as when we added the auxiliary gym, the Cedar Ridge High School, and the wing to the campus, requires a review and possibly upgrades to the stormwater control measures on the campus. Thank goodness when the original plan was done for Cedar Ridge High School, it included those buildings being added, and so the original stormwater pond was able to hold those projects. But we have had to add those. Ms. Purcell remembers when the auditorium was built at her school, when she was principal at Orange Middle. There's a number of subtle and not so subtle ponds around the campus that were all required. And some, like you say, could be small. Some could be very extensive, just based on the amount of impervious water.
I just thought before we do anything, before we go down a design path or architecture path, or just have someone take a look and say, hey, so.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. So
And actually, one other question. Is it possible to it'll come on to the next topic. Is it possible to accelerate bringing those mobile units in?
as soon as I have the money for a project for mobile units, then I can put a project out to bid
So if I move this right now, that does that? Does that?
Tomorrow, we can start. the
Okay, I
bidding
move the recommendation.
process. It's difficult for us to put bids on the street without having funding allocated for the project. So what we never would want to do is do that. Have individuals get bid bonds and have individuals go through the process, and we bring it to the board and the board say, we didn't know anything about that project. We're not voting to approve it. So we always make sure we have approval and the money for the projects before we take the next step.
So again, that you need a vote tonight to do that?
All three of these, I'm asking for a vote this evening so that we can get all of these projects added to the list.
Are there any other questions from board members?
I just had one, and I'm sorry, I'm waiting to be.
No, please,
Okay.
you can, please.
I just had one question. Are we, and listening to the conversation on the playground equipment, and I know you have money to replace the playground equipment. Are we waiting to do all of it at one time, or as equipment breaks, are we replacing that? And so that school has something then, or are we just sort of waiting?
Yeah, two phases. I was waiting on the report just to see if there's anything else that needs to go out for bid immediately. So phase one immediately will be Hillsborough replacement and Central replacement. And then the second phase of that will be the other projects that are deemed to be replaced or nearing the end of life that we would want replaced sometime by the end of this school year.
Okay.
But if there's anything that is immediate, then it would move up to that list of those other two schools.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any other discussion?
That's a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you.
Minutes.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And do I have to make a motion, or she'll just look into the consultant?
I think
To
that's
do
just
this,
noted
the extra
to-
study, is that something that, I mean, what do I make a motion to look to do it?
May I ask a clarifying question? This is not my area of expertise, so I will trust the experts in the room. Is that something you both would think is necessary? What are your thoughts around?
Well, my initial impression is if we're gonna do if we are gonna do any type of construction project, we're gonna be required to get a building permit, so we'll have to go through that process. If they look at the total area of impervious surface on that campus, and that exceeds a percentage, although the canopy we are suggesting for both sides may not increase our impervious surface, they still could calculate what our runoff is for total area. I don't know what the impact of the park that's built next door has had on that total area. So a little bit of concern that they potentially may push us to adding additional stormwater runoff area. I really think that they will.
And I'm not asking a regulatory question, I'm asking a functional question. I'm asking a functional question, should we, because we've struggled with this for so many years, that should we just get an outsider to come in and take a look at it, and just give us an opinion?
Let me help facilitate this, if I may. We don't know what the cost would be, so are you asking for the staff to look at a proposal, or are you looking to have them physically do it?
No,
I just
I'm
want
asking
clarity.
I'm sorry, thank you, I'm asking for a proposal to invite, to put it out for bid. I presume it's gonna be a relatively small project, but I have no idea. I'd like to look at outsiders, an independent assessment of the stormwater and situation at that school.
So I think an independent assessment of stormwater at the school, independent of that, would be a project in itself. That if that's what you're asking us to do, would be not to take any action to move forward. Our process was going to be to do the request for qualification process, which would have the architect or engineer who would be interested in that project present proposals, which would include stormwater control measures, it would include canopy projects, et cetera, as part of the process we would go through for doing that. Just having people come in to give their opinion can be okay, but one of the concerns is if a person's coming in to just give their opinion, they shouldn't be bidding on the project because they shouldn't be given that opportunity over anyone else. So our processes always are following state law and statutory and local requirements of how we hire architects and engineers, which are pretty defined.
I'm saying, I would expect it to be independent. I'm not asking, you're gonna have an assessment done as part of your plan to add the canopies. And what I'm asking for is an assessment of the entire campus to say, given where the water's coming in, given these patterns, those canopies are a good idea, or you really need to do this and this and this. Because what I don't wanna do is the canopies and have continual, because we've done that. We've done mitigations, and there have been cases of additional flooding. So.
I think without further action, I mean, again, part of what we can do is the scope of that project include a building envelope and stormwater review as part of the scope of work for that campus, and we get that, have that reviewed, and then look at what is the method for addressing it.
And what if they say the canopy's not a great idea, you need to do something else?
That's why I said we would have that as part of the scope to ensure that we come back with a different plan. We'd have the money reserved for canopies, but certainly we could use it for canopies, or we could use it.
I just wanna know what the experts say. I don't hate to go through the trouble of doing doing one mitigation when the experts say, you need these other three.
Yeah, in any of these large-scale projects, especially projects like this that are in the formal range, I mean, we always would make sure they're designed properly and they're reviewed thoroughly by architects and engineers.
Right, and that's not,
in the field.
yes, and that's not my point.
That's not my expertise, it's civil engineering.
Right, okay.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Mifflin Global Elementary School Spot Reassignment Discussion.
All right, so I'll be joined by Catherine Mao, our Student Assignment and Technology Coordinator, and some of this information is background information. We know we've covered it previously and at the previous board retreat, and so I'm just going to have it here just for the public and general knowledge, knowing that there are several items that we're going to discuss tonight, specifically to overcrowding at Mifflin Elementary School. And that is the purpose of this conversation this evening. Not really to go through the entire background of capacity and levels of services at all of our elementary schools, but to talk about how we can address immediately overcrowding at the school. And so that's our purpose for the review of this topic this evening. Again, following local policies and regulations. And then in accordance with our policy, there's a couple items that we can utilize to stabilize the growth, and we've talked about those, which is the assignment of planned neighborhoods and developments, and we utilize the CAPS process, the certificates of adequate public schools, to monitor housing developments. We can spot redistrict areas, and then we can reassign or transfer students. And then again, these are our what we utilize to balance schools. And then so Catherine's going to kind of walk through here and talk about our enrollments at our schools and our levels of service.
Hi everyone. So as you can see, when we include the pre-K students, enrollment at Mifflin Cheeks is over capacity by approximately 100 students. Comparing the models for estimating capacity at each school, I've shown the SATFO, the Orange County capacities, and I've shown the state capacity calculations. And it's very important to note that neither of these two agencies use pre-K or the amount of space or the ability to operate shared spaces such as restrooms and cafeterias in these calculations. It's straight up, this is your number of classrooms and here's how many people you can fit in there. At this point in the school year, it's not so much the amount of space at a school as it is the number of seats in a classroom that we have teachers and spaces for. Keeping in mind that the class sizes are very limited, to those low numbers, 18, 16, 17. Grades 4 and 5 are unlimited in the state law. We try to keep them to about 27 apiece, but they can go over. And I wanted to point out that all of the district schools are really struggling with our loss of the 9 teaching positions. So just about every classroom is full to capacity. It was very challenging to find classrooms that had enough space while still maintaining the district average.
And so when we talk about the number of seats that are available, we think about how can we assist with some of the overcrowding. We look at schools that were under capacity right now that have available seats and have available space, but also could serve students who are scheduled to attend Mifflin Cheeks Elementary School. In the short term, again, this is a solution that is being brought outside of a comprehensive school reassignment plan. We do know that that is an item that we will be addressing and talking about in more detail. And so to address that, we looked at the state class size requirements and funding with the funding ratios. Kindergarten 1 to 18, 1 teacher to 18 students, first grade 1 to 16, second and third grade 1 to 17, as Catherine said. It's 1 to 27 locally for 4th and 5th grade. When we looked at Central Elementary School, Grady Brown Elementary School, and Pathways Elementary School, we had to look at where do we not only have seats, but we have teachers where we wouldn't push them into being or having a class size overages. And those class size overages get reported to the state after day 1, or after day 20 and after day 40. And by state law, the superintendent and district is required to be in compliance unless there's a waiver approved or other means to have the class sizes within the state law requirements by day 40. And so one of the changes to state law, which is often confusing, is the LEA average has to meet the funding ratio, which is what you see. So it used to be, you could have, we can't have physically 3 more students in a kindergarten classroom. We could go up to 21, but every place we go up to 21, there has to be another kindergarten class somewhere in the district that has 15 or less, because it has to average out to the 1 to 18, and that's different in order for us to stay in compliance. And so when we look at number of seats, we have 20 kindergarten seats, 4 first grade seats, 17 second, 7 third, and 8 fourth, and 27 fifth. That's all seats, but we do want to leave some of those seats open because if Central, Grady Brown, or Pathways have students that are still enrolling this week or after Labor Day, we don't want to give all the seats away. So we are making sure that we're keeping them within class size requirements as well. So you can see, although there are some seats that may help Mifflin Cheeks, it's not going to be enough to do everything. And so again, trying to stay within the state law, the LEA class size averages, and you can see across the board right now, our district average is out of compliance at 16.5. So if we don't lose students because they withdraw or there are no-shows, we would have to correct that by day 40, which would include additional teachers, additional classrooms, etc. So we'll continue to monitor, but you can see what our class size LEA average ratios are. And so it is challenging to make sure we're addressing it but not causing issues elsewhere. And so the first recommendation was following policy that the superintendent opens up or extends the voluntary transfer window that ended on March 31st, and we would allow parents to transfer to Grady Brown or Pathways Elementary School. As far as discretionary transfers, transportation would not be provided. If you don't have objection to this, then we would do that through next week, give them a week to apply. And if necessary, if more people apply than we have seats identified for, we'd follow our same regulations as far as how we run a lottery, and we would allow students to be assigned. And so with that, we saw all those seats, but the reality is
We would just have pathways for voluntary transfers, 5 seats in second grade. And Grady Brown has a few more seats, 10 in kindergarten, 4 in second grade, 4 in third, 6 in fifth. And again, that still leaves them room in their grades in case they have new students that are enrolling this week. So that's one option, is we extend the window and allow additional transfers to these 2 schools. The second option is to temporarily spot reassign students. And we talked about this in May with Cedar Ridge High School, with some of the same areas that we're now seeing elementary students move into that are zoned for Mifflin Cheeks. Again, we're not talking about reassigning any student that is currently sitting in a seat at Mifflin Cheeks Elementary School. Those students from the developments discussed tonight are still attending. They're still provided school bus transportation, but we would ask that any new students that go to enroll during this school year go to the overflow school, and the overflow school has been identified as Central Elementary School. And so we would reassign students. There's 2 developments here that we are watching and monitoring, Collington Farms and Meadowstone. That's one area just south of I-40, I-85 and Mebane. And then Havenstone is just northwest of Mifflin Cheeks, and it is off Lebanon Road. And that development, we would recommend at this time we cap it, close it, and any new students that enroll be reassigned to Central Elementary School. Again, we have a few students that have already enrolled at Mifflin Cheeks. We will continue enrolling them at Mifflin Cheeks. We have looked at our equity assessment and reviewed impacts for this, and do not believe this would have negative impacts to either school at this time. It certainly would benefit Mifflin Cheeks by having fewer students on the campus. We do have, and the other reason we recommended Central, not only because there's space, but we do have a bus already that's going to Havenstone for Hillsborough Elementary School. And so as far as school bus transportation, we're already running a bus in there for Mifflin Cheeks for the students already assigned. We could easily add capacity to the bus route for those new elementary students. And since the bus is already going to Hillsborough, Central Elementary School is 500 feet away, we could easily transport them. Where Collington Farms, we would be very difficult at this point in time closing it and reassigning students to another school without trying to run 2 different buses through the neighborhood, going to 2 different locations. And we just, you heard our discussion earlier about bus drivers. We just do not have capacity to extend ourselves that far out for that many students at this time, although we do believe there needs to be continued discussion about reassignment or spot reassignment of those developments for the 2023-24 school year. We would come back on that. So this evening, we're discussing 2 options. One is the making sure that we have the window extended for a limited time over the next week for Mifflin Cheeks students who would like to transfer to Grady Brown or Pathways, and then reassignment at Havenstone for a spot reassignment to Central Elementary School. And again, we talked about some of the, why we're recommending that, and then in the future we would look at a more comprehensive plan. And so these are our 2 recommendations this evening. Questions or comments?
Bonnie?
I'll start with some simple ones. It's just curious, how long does it take to get from Havenstone to Hillsborough Elementary, and how many students are we actually moving?
Right now, we're moving 0 students. We anticipate, there could be as many as 20 additional students that are involved. I do not know the exact bus time, because again, it's already an established route, but I can provide that to the board. Travel time today when I drove from that area into town by car is 10-15 minutes, but we know by bus it's probably 25 minutes would be an educated guess on my part, but I can get you an exact exact time it's taking that bus right now to get from Havenstone to Hillsborough. and we would anticipate, just a few more minutes on that run.
I know we're running late on time, so I wanna keep it short, but just, and I'm supportive of these, recommendations. But just quickly, so if a parent wanted to move a second grade student to Pathways, for example, to take one of those spots, but they also had a fourth grader and there wasn't room, you wouldn't make an exception even though?
Not unless space would be available, and that's one of the difficulties, is we can't overload classes and then require another teacher on that campus. Although we have space at Pathways by capacity, as Catherine mentioned, we don't have the teachers there that are allotted. But certainly if we received a large number of students, then perhaps there would be an opportunity for us to have the additional staff.
Thank you.
Just one question on Havenstone. Is there any students going to Evelyn Cheeks currently?
There are, how many, 8, 10, 14,
Oh, it was on the slide, there were 20.
So.
They're currently going to Evelyn Cheeks.
Yes, we had a lot of, excuse me.
That's okay.
We had a lot of address changes right before school started. Right there, right before.
So when we do this spot reassignment, if that family has other kids that are not school age, they would continue to go to Evelyn Cheeks. They wouldn't be forced to go.
No, if a student is currently at Evelyn Cheeks, they would be allowed to stay at Evelyn Cheeks until a decision's made when we come back in December and we bring our open closed schools. We would need to discuss, are we going to allow transfer students to continue at the school and any rising siblings at that time? By our current policy today, if a student is assigned to the school, their siblings are allowed to attend the school.
Okay,
But it is something we do need to review for next year.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm, thank you.
But just to clarify, you said that if you're live in Havenstone now and you're in Evelyn now, you would not be reassigned?
Not this school year. For the 22-23 school year, you're going to continue to be at Havenstone. Then we will have to decide, because Havenstone is now spot reassigned to Central Elementary School, are we going to allow those students to continue on transfer at Evelyn Cheeks, or due to overcrowding, are we going to say, when they reapply, that we're sorry, there's, the space is not available and you have to go to your assigned school after this school year. So that's something we're gonna need to continue to review and look at any transfer impacts at that point in time. That's certainly a final decision of the board, and we just haven't gone through the data and are ready to make a recommendation on that this evening.
So the only thing that would affect Evelyn today is voluntary people that are voluntarily transferring.
Except for new individuals after tonight, if you approve to move into Havenstone, those new individuals, when they come to register, would be registering at Central Elementary School, and we would be providing bus transportation to Central Elementary School, brand new families after today.
So we'd have some families being bused to Evelyn and some families being bused. So we'd have 2 buses.
Correct, because we already run 2 buses in that neighborhood now because of Hillsborough Elementary School. And we have to be, and we've talked to our transportation department and about code systems and identifying systems, and yes, there is a possibility students going to get on the wrong bus. And there's other software, other applications with parents, and here comes the bus, being able to monitor and make sure that we are aware that that is an issue we will need to monitor and make sure we have appropriate plans for.
Sorry, could I just add one point just for additional context would be by state law and board policy, any family can request a transfer within the transfer window, so there would be an opportunity for staff and ultimately the board to make exceptions to this. I mean, I think the whole idea would be to stick with these attendance areas to the extent possible to control your capacity concerns. But if there were a family with a particular hardship, reason that that school wouldn't work for them, that could come to the board on appeal and you can grant the transfer.
Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
I'm just gonna raise some concerns about the transportation, especially since we're having, we're having so many transportation problems now. I'm concerned about adding buses that we don't have.
There's not.
Current buses.
Yeah, they would use the HES bus to bring not only to HES, but to Central.
But the HES bus isn't running now. Right, you said there's no one, you don't have.
No, we have students.
They do
that are
have
going to
students there.
HES
Oh, I'm
now
sorry, I
from
thought you said we're
Fiscal.
not transferring, I'm sorry, I asked the question, I thought you said we're not transporting anyone.
That was why we thought it, well, first let me compliment you on a fabulous outfit. And second, yes, we are already transporting students. That's why we chose it, because it would just be one bus.
Oh,
It's a nice
okay, I didn't
compact
hear that.
subdivision and fewer stops.
Oh, no, okay, got it, thank you for that clarification.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we're down to the final budget and unfunded budget request.
Good evening. So for discussion this evening, we have the final fiscal year 23 budget, and also to have a discussion around some unfunded budget requests. So the highlights for this budget year is we had a $440 per pupil increase in our local funding from our commissioners. You were able to decompress the classified salary pay scale by 3/8% and add step increases. You were able to give years of service supplement credit based upon license versus years of service in Orange County. We also had the state new budget on top of the biennium budget, which gave a average 4.2% increase to our certified staff and a 4% increase to our classified staff. And another important note, which you've heard with all of the allotments and those types of things, all of those waivers that were in place for COVID for districts to be held harmless on their enrollment are no longer in place. They were all removed. So districts are being held to their enrollment numbers as they actually are, not pre-COVID. So we'll start by taking a look at our local operating budget. We'll start with, we have our board of commissioner approved per pupil funding, which was $38.6 million. We have fund balance appropriations that you were previously approved that have yet to be spent, that we will continue to carry those until they are spent. We have our fines and forfeitures revenue and interest revenue that is anticipated at $154,000. That will give us a total revenue out of our local budget of $39.5 million. Right now, that is budgeted for 26.3 at salaries, and you can see how the other items are there. $4 million is still our charter through anticipated past expenses for this upcoming school year. And for any new members on the board, what basically that means is any student who is domiciled in Orange County and would have been districted to attend one of our schools but chooses to attend a charter school, we have to send that county approved per pupil funding with that student. So we are very fortunate that the commissioners do fund us for all of our charter students. We just act as a pass-through. So those funds pass right through to the charter schools. Wanted to take an opportunity to break down that $39.5 million revenue for you. We've had a few conversations just looping back as to how those revenues are supporting each of the initiatives that we've talked about through this budget cycle. We had a continuation budget that was $35.4 million. So of the 39.5, 35.4 is going towards that continuation budget. 1.1 million is associated with the salary and benefit increases at the 2.5% increase. The $500,000 is the additional 1.5% increase that was in the most recent budget. The $600,000 was for us to decompress those classified salary scales. The adjustment for the supplements was another $650,000. We have our carryover fund balance appropriations that they will just continue to carry over. So that left us with $426,000 that is earmarked or as a placeholder now for fuel increases as well as those anticipated increases in the other consumables. The bus driver pay increase that you just approved previously will shift from that line item there up to a salary line item. Again, this hasn't changed since the last time we talked. I just want to reiterate again that this is unaudited. Don't anticipate much changes, but there could be some changes. I would anticipate that they would be minimal. But basically, right now I'm projecting the district's available fund balance to be $4.2 million. So we have our state allotments, and these, just for your information, I won't bore you by going through each of these categories here, but we have $50.6 million that has been allocated to Orange County Schools from DPI to support each of the initiatives here. We will begin our budget here, and as we have adjustments or revisions from the state, we will have budget amendments forthcoming associated with that. Our federal grants budget at this time is, as a placeholder, projected to be $11.6 million. We have spent down those gear funds, and we have spent down those ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds. So the large pot that we have remaining is our ESSER 3 funds, which is at $7.2 million starting out this year. And then, of course, our other title funds, and those dollars are reflected here. Again, any carryover balances have not been reflected in these numbers yet, and budget amendments will be made as those carryover balances are approved and released to the district. Just a summary, and I did include capital in this. I know a lot of times we pull capital out, but when we go to looking at approving a budget resolution, which will be brought to you at the next board meeting, it will include capital, it will include the enterprise funds, and it will include the restricted fund. All that we're looking at here is state, local, federal, and capital at $140 million. So, and if there are not any questions, I'm gonna kind of go into the, all right.
I just want to, so in the local funding, you included about almost $800,000 of non-recurring expenses. And the federal funds included the ESSER money, which, so it's, just so for our perspective, it includes a combination of recurring expenses and non-recurring expenses. Okay.
So one of the items that was shared as a talking point as we look at finalizing the district budget and deciding what the final budget is going to be going forward was the supplements for our certified staff. And as we had talked about in our retreat on August the 6th, right now, here is our certified supplements, what they currently are, and how they're broken down for each of the years of experience. And you can see this was based on at that time of 54 vacancies. I believe Ms. Hatcher and her team's done a great job. We don't have that many right now in our certified category, But basically, it costs $6.2 million for us to provide local supplements to our certified staff. That does not include your classified, this is only your certified. If we made any adjustments to these supplement tiers, a 1% adjustment would cost the local budget $418,000. So just to give you context, looking at the people where they're placed in those tiers and what those costs would be, just for a 1% in each tier would cost us $418,000. Gives us a good starting point and context if we're wanting to have discussions about 0.5% or 2%, et cetera, just to give you an idea that that would be $418,000. That would be a recurring expenditure that would change each subsequent year as the state raises the base salary. So based upon salaries as they currently are right now, it's would be $418,000 to increase it 1%. Some of the other items that were mentioned for us to revisit before we finalized our budget was the supplemental funds for the additional teacher instructional support supplement. What this basically, to remind everyone, these are the funds that the state allocated in their budget to provide an additional supplement to certified and instructional staff. Pre-K teachers were excluded, and any teachers who were not coded or sitting directly at a school. So overall, that roughly is about 31 staff that were not included in that additional recommendation because they did not qualify. So if the board chose to provide that supplement, it would have to come out of local funding and it would be recurring because the state funds, the intent of those state funds was to supplement teachers and instructional support. Those funds are coming from low wealth funds. Low wealth funds cannot go to support pre-K, so therefore those funds are restricted to support pre-K teachers or instructional staff. It was also expressed to have a conversation to look to see if we wanted to consider looking at some type of differential or additional stipend for our exceptional children teachers and those other exceptional children student-facing staff. Some of the items I believe that we had looked at and talked about was like our lead custodians and child nutrition managers, maybe an additional monthly supplement for being an EC teacher or an ECTA or anyone who is student-facing. If it's 109 staff. If we looked at doing that in conjunction with some of those other lead positions, we're talking of $450 a month would cost about $600,000, and the EC budget cannot sustain or take on that additional expenditure. So any of those items would have to be considered out of our local funding. And then, of course, to bring some closure and final discussions surrounding master's pay. We did ask, as our budget request to the commissioners, for the potential, or ask for that funding for master's pay for our staff who are not receiving it, that it's not recognized by the state, that we provide that for any staff who come into the district and have that. It is estimated based upon the number of positions that that could be as much as $3.1 million. We currently know that we have roughly 31 staff in the district that have it on their license that are not receiving pay for it. But again, we do know that there could be many others who have a master's degree but do not have it on their license because they didn't add it, because there was no need to add it, because the state didn't recognize it or provide them any pay for it. So, questions?
Yeah, so I want to start by apologizing to the board. The intention for the list was, since the family liaisons were listed as an item on the agenda, was to have all of these together as a overall discussion, as these are the trade-offs you're making. And it definitely was a communication that on my side, no, it wasn't you. I realized at this point what we talked about, and you did exactly that. But the intention was, if we're gonna make trade-offs, us knowing what things shift if you do that. And I guess the other question or point is, there was the 426, was it 426 was the
Yes,
number?
sir.
And that's minus the 115.
Mhm.
Is that coming from fund balance?
No.
That's coming from recurring, so that's,
So it's about 311 that's left available before we do anything.
That we would pull from fuel reserves or other increased cost of consumables.
can I ask a more basic question? And that's, what enrollment assumptions are behind these numbers and how is that shifting? And I'm especially concerned about if our enrollment's going up, how are we gonna staff those classrooms? And how is the change in enrollment how is enrollment changing from when we set this budget to where we are today and where we might be in 2 weeks from now on day 10?
That's a great question, and let me try to simply answer it.
I dare you.
So, we know that the state has allotted us a certain number of positions based upon our enrollment. We know that we have more positions than the state has allotted us. Roughly our local budget is, there's roughly 260 positions overall, but I believe it's like 69 or 70 classroom teachers that are in that continuation budget that are not, we do not receive funding for from the state. So basically, I feel like that the continuation budget is based upon what our staffing was at the previous school year. So based upon the staffing that we had here in the previous year. We've held to the class size numbers as people have retired or left. Those vacancies have not been filled and are sitting there for if we encounter those instances where we have enrollment increase to a level where we have to add another teacher, that we would be able to pull from the vacancy in the continuation budget to add back to the classroom.
Okay, if I understand what you said is that you're holding almost in reserve the positions that we had, right? Is that where you have a little pool of resource that if we need to add classrooms, you're gonna pull them out of your pool?
Mm-hmm.
My question's a little bit more basic, and that's, what was our enrollment when we set our budget in June versus where is it today?
Basically, we are pretty much, I think we might be, 50, so we were at 7267
Yes.
yesterday, and DPI's projection was, what this budget is based upon is 7182, so right now it's a difference of about 84 students.
I don't have today's numbers. That was yesterday. We were expecting 7,267 students had enrolled and 365 had not showed up yesterday. We're still waiting on Now, some of those, it may be they withdrew and just haven't notified us yet. Sometimes they move out of state, and there are some states that just never request records, and we don't know, and so that's part of the tracking process. We also know after Labor Day, for whatever reason, folks decide school starts next week. And so we're continuing to look for 365, but we would love to see 7,267 plus.
So the 7182, which is what this budget is based on, if we get in our day 40 count 100 students more than that projection, the state will adjust our allotments and give us more positions.
In the county?
No.
The county won't, so it's
No.
funny, if the numbers go down, the state cuts them and the county doesn't, but if the numbers go up, the state gives us more money, but the county doesn't.
Right.
And I'm sorry, so we had 7267 is what the budget was based?
7182 is what the budget was based on. 7267 is what we were anticipating yesterday, which, and there were 365 of the 7267 that did not report.
Okay, so we have about 6,900 students have showed up, is that what I'm hearing?
6902.
I usually don't, thank you, very good. Okay. I have another comment about that, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing on looking at the supplement. I remember that as kind of we were still in the brainstorming process. Because there were a couple of topics that I know some of us have talked about, but we didn't get to, and that was a supplement for Title I, supplement for bilingual, but some things that really might ping our equity priorities and say, should we start to, or in some of these hard to reach positions. So there's part of me that feels like this additional supplement for teachers is not quite over, but there's more to have to it. Of course, doesn't look like we have the money, but it just, there was more to that discussion that's still to be had. And of course, there's the Masters for Social Workers, which is a topic that, we talked about phasing the social workers and possibly starting with phasing the master's degree and doing the social workers first. So that was on the list, and, so we just never got into that discussion. I think they're committee level discussions first. I don't think it's right for now, but I think the conversation is still going.
I think the intent was just to make sure before we approve a final budget and set a resolution that the board had an opportunity to revisit any of those items to ensure that there wasn't steps that needed to be taken before we approve that final resolution. And of course, you do have the option as the year goes on, if we get additional funding as a result of enrollment or fuel reserves that the state provides more funding, that, we have those options to relook how those funds are allocated, and you always have the option to look at your fund balance.
The fund balance is healthier than it was last time.
Right.
A lot healthier, thank you for that.
Just one question from me. When you said 7267 and the 365 didn't show up, does that mean our current count is 6902? Yeah. Okay, so that means we're actually below the allocations. Okay. But again, we're still got.
Yeah, we anticipate, I think the trend is typically after Labor Day, that we do have more students who do show up and enroll.
Okay. And then I guess the only clarity you nicely said was the 311 that's left. That's really focused on contingency for nutrition or fuel or any of those other items.
Mm-hmm.
I would personally not feel comfortable in doing anything else given how tight the budget is, and also knowing we don't know what's going to happen.
I concur.
All right, any other questions from anyone? is not an action item, this is just informational.
Just information and discussion, the budget will come as, here at your next meeting for approval.
Okay.
We've talked about this as a board, the numbers are moving a lot, they can go, they're not quite moving in the direction. I mean, I like the fund balance is moving in a really good direction, but the other numbers are not quite moving in the direction that we like, there's lots of needs. And I wonder if, and we talked about this a month or so ago, but should we consider freezing the central office and unfilled positions in the central office until some of these things settle out? I'm curious what other board members think.
I think that would be a step in the right direction right now, since we're so unsure about what we're gonna do, or what we're gonna have, not what we're gonna do, what we're gonna have. It's tight, I mean, there's no question about it, it's tight. And, fund balance looks better, but we don't need to use that for every little thing that comes along. We need to make sure we're using that for the right purposes. Just my thought.
Other thoughts?
I know I made mention of that, about a month ago. And, I guess that was one of the choices that we looked at, so.
Any other comments?
I'm not ready to make that decision now. Are we just throwing that out there, or?
I think there's been a.
Yeah, it's kind of a thought of should we do it for a month or two, at least until our accounts settle down.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Are there any caveats, meaning if there is a need to bring a position to the board, I would still be able to do so?
For me, yes, that would be an absolute.
Okay. Just for clarity.
So for me, I would be in support of it, especially if we're going to the county commissioners to ask for more money and them to ask us what we're doing on our part. I would feel much more comfortable to be able to say we have taken some action to support where we are and why we're going to them. And again, like you mentioned, I would definitely want that open to any positions that you would want to bring forward for review or approval.
And just, I think everyone was aware of this, but all new hires would require the superintendent's recommendation board approval anyway. So basically, but I guess this would be a statement that in general, we don't want to see any new hires for a set period of time.
We're saying if the position's
Like
not
we're
filled.
not actively recruiting to fill
If
them.
the position's not filled, we don't want to fill it at this point.
Unless there's a need for something that she needs to bring to us, and Dr. Felder certainly would bring that to us and we could make that decision, would be my way.
So you want to be careful about the wording of whatever motion or resolution the board adopts. If there's, if it's not an ironclad, then you just want to be careful that it's not stated as such.
And it's just,
Yeah, I'm concerned with the federal programs director request that Dr. Felder made that we tabled, that I think is really important to consider so that we're carefully, have careful oversight over our federal use of funds, and to some extent that's a position that would be funded out of the federal funds themselves, so I hope that would be an exception.
Right, I think what I've heard, and if I have not heard this correctly, somebody stop me, but what I heard is everybody was saying that they would be comfortable at the superintendent's discretion to bring forward. The position you're talking about hasn't been approved by the board and it's tabled for 2 months?
October 12th.
So on October 12th, the superintendent could absolutely bring that position forward.
and if you saw the personnel report, there's a temporary terminating contract for someone to do the work, so they're bringing in right?
I'm sorry?
There's a what?
There's someone on the personnel report that's gonna be helping with the federal contracts and programs, so there's a temporary, I don't know about.
I'm sorry, I can't say a name, please forgive me. There is an
Please do that,
individual
yes.
that is, but it's not all federal programs, it is just the title
It's just the
programs.
title program.
Just titled, it does not
Okay.
include all federal programs.
Okay.
And another caveat would be around nurses and bus drivers, which you just approved the increases that we must actively recruit for those positions. So I hope
How do you
that could be in
cover
a
that?
caveat from the outset, please.
And nurses are school-based,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes, and they're funded from the county directly.
Right.
Yeah, so the nurses, I just don't think the nurses would apply here, but the bus
Well,
drivers for
they're
sure.
in schools.
Right.
There's also a lead nurse and a floating nurse.
If I may interject, I think what I recall Dr. Felder may be hinting on is some of our larger schools, that one nurse, it's too much of a caseload, and that, there are situations where there may be an additional nurse. One nurse for 1,300 students is a lot, and right now we're only funded for one nurse per school.
Right, and we left that as you were all gonna go to the county and talk, see what they could do about that.
Right, currently that's all funded by the county.
One per school.
Right,
Yeah,
right, I'm just
sorry.
saying there's
Got
not,
it.
I'll rephrase it. We currently don't have any additional nurses that we have approved beyond what's currently there. If there was a request to change that based on going to the county and the county says, no, we're not doing it, then that discussion could happen here. But the original was to go to the county and have that discussion. Well, we're actually in this discussion leading into the request for the budget amendment to the.
So should there be a motion
If-
to freeze central office positions, all unfilled central office positions, except bus drivers? All right? That's the motion, is that?
I heard there was some concept, unless the board just determines upon recommendation of the
Unless the
to make it
superintendent-
an exception upon recommendation of the superintendent
Yes, yeah, superintendent has
for
the
particular.
right to come
under-
and ask.
I don't know if there's a standard.
Okay, so freeze central office positions, except bus drivers, and giving the superintendent discretion to come to the board and request additional
exception.
positions, which the board will decide as they're brought forward.
So we do have a float nurse position that the board approved that is currently not filled?
And it was ESSER funded.
And that was an ESSER funded position?
ESSER funded position.
Well, I think that is,
that could be, oh, it is filled?
It is
Okay.
filled, the concern just being, we want to make sure that, again, the board understands there is another position that is outside what the county funded with our nurse plan last year was a float nurse.
And if we run into an issue.
And that position
Yeah,
is
exactly.
filled right now?
Currently,
Yes,
but
currently.
nurses tend to turn over,
Okay.
given the workload.
And where is that nurse assigned to the larger schools?
They
I'm
float,
assuming?
right now it's mainly secondary schools, and then we just applied for the state grant. And so, there may be an opportunity to get some of that funding for this is not covered by the state. But I just wanted to recognize there is an additional position that's outside of one person.
and that person is
Serving
helping
schools.
with this secondary school problem,
Serving
so they're
schools.
really school-based. Right.
Good.
So you want to exclude that, the floating nurses too? Is that what I'm hearing?
As long as the position remains filled,
So it's
but
not
there's
an issue,
sometimes.
so then you could bring it forward as it
Yeah,
comes.
I just want to be
exactly.
clear.
Alright, so motion is freeze them, except bus drivers, and with the discretion of the superintendent to bring forward positions that need to be filled, and to do it
For
until.
the board review.
For board review.
For what period of time? you don't want it, it's not a permanent freeze.
It's not a permanent freeze. Did you tell us once, Rhonda, that we've done 90-day freezes?
I was gonna say thank you for the opportunity. Yes, the last time that we, implemented this procedure, it was for a 90-day period, that all central office vacancies were, frozen for 90 days to allow lapsed salary to help, address budget issues. And then, of course, the superintendent had the opportunity, if those positions, warranted needing to be filled before the 90 days, to bring them to the board.
And I think what we're looking for is when will we have a pretty good idea of where our enrollment sits?
I would say not until day 40, maybe.
Day 11.
Okay.
Day 11, we'll have a better understanding, and then we track every 7 to 10 days. But day 11 would be a good day that we should know the no-shows, students that are coming, withdrawing.
For my Lens, the state funding is day 40. So, because Lens, I like his day better.
11.
So Dr. Felder has an additional comment?
Just one other clarification, given the agenda and the request for proposal to reclassify family liaison positions, because we have 2 in a queue that we didn't bring forward because we need to address this. So that may be an exception. I don't know if you want to hold until we have that discussion, and then bring the family liaisons. We have 2 vacancies currently, and we have a recommendation, but we didn't bring that forward because we need to reclassify them because of salary. That's another group that turns over very quickly, as you are aware.
We could approve those tonight
Yeah, we
as
could
part
talk
of that.
about those. Let's
Right.
talk about those. You're bringing them forward, but I think we should deal with the freeze and set a date. So we need some time after the day 10 or day 11. So is that where October 12th came out? I don't know where October 12th came out.
So,
No, please.
no, October 12th was 2 months out from the tabling of the discussion of the federal, thank you. Federal program.
That's independent of this.
Got
That
it.
is
I
just
was
the
just
date.
trying
Yes.
to, because it, it won't be the 11th, but I think we need to have some idea of where the enrollment sits. And so 10 days, 20 days, 40 days is and whatever the day is, and then you'll have to look at what the implications are of the enrollment change. So.
Are you recommending the 90 day, is your motion 90 days?
Well, I don't know.
and-
I think 90 days is more than we need, so.
I'll just remind the board, it can change that at any time, whatever time period you pick, whether to renew it or to extend it.
So you're saying we could go for 90 and then pull it back if we
change it.
Yes, yes.
Yes, that's
Absolutely.
okay.
True, except just to keep in mind, if you need to repeal the freeze at one meeting, for the next meeting, for the superintendent to bring back recommendations, so there's a 30-day lag built in there, just to keep that.
Unless.
Yeah, I'd rather it be shorter.
You could have a
than
shorter period of time that
extend
you could extend without running into the 30-day lag issue as well, that you could go either way.
30? I mean, I don't want to be alone on this. Is 30 enough? 45?
I think we need to wait till the 40, at least till after the 40, because that's a
And that's 40 school days,
milestone.
correct? That's 40 school days, which is about
90 days.
90 days.
So, it's
90
like I
days.
said,
With the option, if something comes up, the superintendent can bring it forward.
Absolutely.
So
All right.
change it.
All right, we have a motion that is on the floor. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, it would probably be helpful to state the motion, because it's changed and morphed a couple
It's
times.
a freeze, central office, unfilled central, we're freezing all unfilled central office positions,
Exception of bus drivers,
with the exception of bus drivers.
and also the central office nursing positions, or is? I
No,
wasn't
those
sure
are
if that
filled.
would-
Bring it
that-
forward.
That's not, okay.
It's filled, right?
Just bus
Okay, just bus drivers.
Subject to superintendent's discretion.
To make to recommend an exception to the board. Right,
Right.
so that, unless the board makes an exception on recommendations. Is that, and then, yes, the last
For the
period of.
last 90
of how-
days, for 90 days.
For 90 days.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a proper second. Any discussion? Okay, with no discussion, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have one dissension. All right, so board, we are at 10 o'clock. Per policy, we would need to extend. Dr. Felder and I have been chatting a little bit. We do want to cover the liaisons, and we do need to go back to closed session for a couple of items that are very important to some families and students. We would need a motion to extend. Hopefully we can get through these very quickly and go back to closed session.
So the other thing is the family liaisons, because it's.
Yes, the next one's the family liaisons. I'm not sure.
So we're dropping working condition, we're dropping the
Yes,
strategic plan.
that would be removed.
So 10 minutes?
Well, remember, we still have to go into.
Right, you were
right.
looking for the a motion to extend, right?
Mhm.
For 10 minutes, is that enough? 15?
We're doing it. Ms. Hatcher, would 10 minutes or 15 be?
10 minutes is 10 minutes, yes ma'am.
Okay.
Move to extend the meeting for 10 minutes?
Mr. Appley.
Does that encompass closed session? How long do we anticipate?
Right, that's what I was getting at.
Because that's part of the meeting.
Right.
Oh, does
Closed
it?
session.
Oh, got it. Oh, forget it, I have no idea.
I move that we extend the meeting 30 minutes.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we are extended 30 minutes. Can we go through this? Thank you.
The one on the right.
I'm not sure where are we in the slide deck for the family, is it next?
Four more times.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, Board Chair Everson, Sheriff Purcell, board members. I'm coming to you this evening to request a reclassification for the family liaison position. Pretty much, these are the areas I'm gonna cover regarding the request. As always, we want to align our positions and our reclassifications. We want to have an alignment with our strategic plan as well as our equity plan. Strategic plan goal 3 talks about the recruitment and the hiring of exemplary staff. And our equity plan also talks about, particularly strategic plan 4, it talks about and around the empowerment of the community. And this is a huge part of this position and what this position will do, while also removing barriers and engaging in culture responsive practices that strengthen the connection between the communities and families, as well as our students. So the purpose of this request is obviously to recommend a reclassification of this position due to national staffing shortages and also with a request to enhance the recruitment and retention efforts to this hard-to-fill position. Some background information on this particular position. The district has had difficulty sustaining candidates in this role due to the salary and education requirements. Additionally, this was discussed by the board in May and at a June 2020 board committee meeting to explore the options of salary increase and educational requirements in an effort to expand our hiring pool to make the position more appealing to applicants and retain our existing staff. Hence, the role of the family liaison has evolved and became a major part of our district equity plan, in which it supports all Orange County school families with an emphasis on the historically marginalized families, while serving to bridge the gap between the school district and the community. Its equity impact identifies, I already stated that, and removes barriers. The financial impact, I will invite Ms. Raft to the podium with me, so we can kind of go over and she can explain the financial impact, because I do not want to get it incorrect. So she is going to cover the financial impact, and then I'll come back with the recommendation for the actions and next steps.
So right now, the local budget currently funds $178,300 for these 4 positions. That's part of the continuation budget. Reclassifying the pay and adding the months of employment, as well as providing the recruitment bonus, would require additional local funding of approximately $49,000 that would be recurring, that would then be reduced from the $311 that we just spoke about. That would be an additional $49,000 that would be allocated from those funds to support reclassifying the pay of these positions from a grade 62 to a grade 64, as well as increasing the months of employment from 10 months to 12.
So, to summarize the recommendation, as Ms. Graff has stated, the salary reclassification from the current pay scale that there are 60, grade 62, they will move to a 64. Increase the months of employment from 10 months to 12 months. And then also, as she indicated, adding the hard-to-fill recruitment bonus plan, as we spoke of earlier this evening. And then allowing 2 positions, allowing only one of the positions not to require a bilingual skill set. And currently, right now, we still have 1 more vacancy that we need to fill for this particular position.
So for clarification, I believe the board approved that allowance
Yes,
on that 1 position, so
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
done.
Yes, ma'am. That is
To
correct.
not
Thank you.
require a
Thank you.
bilingual.
Are there any questions?
Questions from anyone? I guess the only clarity I have is, so, as you stated, Ms. Rath, we would be down to 262 for any unforeseen items.
Else that would be in the budget that you would not have to look to fund balance for.
All right, any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the recommendation to change the pay grade from 62 to 64 for the family liaisons.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just, for clarification, the motion encompass the other recommendations listed in the abstract as well?
Yes.
So it's the motion's to accept the administration's recommendation regarding these positions, okay?
Which extends it to 12 months too.
Correct, it goes from 10 to 12 months, add to the hard-to-fill recruitment bonus plan, and allow 1 or more positions to be required not to have a bilingual skill requirement.
And that would give us 4 family liaisons, as I'm hearing you.
Yes. Which is what we have now.
Yeah, but that would give us, we would keep the 4.
4 or 5? 4,
It's 4.
3 bilingual, 1.
It says it's a total of 4 positions. All right, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So before we go in closed, we stepped over what we're doing for the Board of Commissioners request for the budget amendment. I just want to quickly close that so we have clear direction on next steps. I had shared with the board that I did reach out to Chapel Hill, and they are very interested in going in with a joint request versus each one of us doing a separate request. They'll be discussing this on Thursday. Obviously, their full board needs to agree as well. If we agree as a board to move forward with that, my discussion with them would be probably the easiest way to move forward with this is to have our superintendent and their superintendent work together on just clearing up the wording for us to have a request that we would mail to them, and of course we would sign it, or I would sign it at the end of that, and you would all get a chance to review that prior to us sending it, of course. Any thoughts?
I just have a question about should, as part of your collaboration meeting, should there first be a meeting, I don't know if it's two superintendents with the manager or the chairs and the superintendents and the manager, to just talk to the manager and open up the conversation, you know, so that we know, because there's been some question about should we, is it, you know, the commissioners have already allocated their budget, so their budgets are taken, so are we asking, is it better to, and they're gonna tell us to use the fund balance, right? That's what they've told us in the past. So I don't wanna preempt them or what they're gonna say, but should there be a conversation with the manager first before we issue a letter, or do you just wanna send a letter?
I believe we were told that's already occurred. Dr. Felder, do you?
Yes, I've had a conversation with the manager, and per the email that was shared,
Mhm.
it's like Dr. Hamlet has as well.
Okay, so, okay.
Okay, so is the board comfortable with moving forward with that plan? Okay, I don't know, do we need an official motion to proceed in that manner?
I mean, you could, I think.
Since we're requesting
I
money.
think your superintendent's here and here's what you're saying, and, you know, it's gonna come back to the board anyway, so we wouldn't be taking a formal action at this point, but just queuing up for further discussion, essentially, right? I mean, if you're asking the superintendent to work with her counterpart, come up with some suggested language for a letter, bring it back to the board at a future meeting. So I don't know that you can have a formal action on that if you wish, but you don't need to, I don't think, as long as it's understood that's the plan.
So I guess the way I envisioned it was not to necessarily bring back that document,
Okay,
but to share it. And if there were significant concerns, then we can have a conversation, but just because we're trying to move this along quickly.
I see.
Because we do have a joint meeting with them next month on the 29th, so definitely put that on y'all's calendars.
I understand better now. So
Yeah.
the review by the board would not be at a formal meeting but simply an opportunity to say, hold on, I think we need to have a discussion about this.
Exactly.
At which point we would hit the pause button and queue it up for a board meeting.
Correct, and if somebody said, this isn't gonna work, then we'd do that. If not, the intention would be from the motion to move forward with it and have me as the chair sign it, Chapel Hill sign it, and it presented to the county.
So I think it just, in the interest of moving things along, it's late, there's still a closed session. If there's a consensus that that's a good idea, the minutes can reflect the consensus. That's not an item you need to take a vote on.
Any concerns with?
If everyone's comfortable with that approach.
All right, seeing none, we'll go with consensus.
Board reach consensus too on this one.
All right, with that out of the way, do we have a motion to return to closed session based on prior?
For the reasons stated in the agenda or something like that.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are in closed session.